Yeah. Warren, see that camera right there? So you want to point that out, this camera, and see right here. Yeah.
Good evening, all, and welcome to the June 13th meeting of the Grosse Pointe Park City Council. I asked the city manager if we were ready to start the meeting, and he said yes. And I said, "Where's the streaming equipment? We've got to be ready to stream." And he pointed out to me that there's a camera there and there are cameras here. So we have our new technology in place tonight to stream to the community. So, our team. So hello, community. With that, I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Brenner.
Present.
Gallagher.
Present.
Caulfield.
Here.
Wiener.
Present.
Rellon.
Present.
McMillan.
Here.
And Mayor Hodges.
Here. Move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. I will, however, point out though that today is June 13th, tomorrow is June 14th, which is Flag Day. So I think it's worth noting that our original flag was adopted in 1777, this current version in 1960 when we added the star for Hawaii. So just a little point of interest while we, before moving into our pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving on to our consent agenda, which is up for your consideration, members of council. Included in that agenda are the approval of our April 28th minutes, approval of our May 9th minutes, committee and commissions reports, finance report, and an appointment of the Planning Commission Administrative Officer. Hopefully you all had an opportunity to review those documents, and if so, a motion would be in order to approve them.
So moved.
Moved by Wiener, second by Gallagher. Any discussion? Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Brenner.
Yes.
Gallagher.
Yes.
Caulfield.
Yes.
Wiener.
Yes.
Rellon.
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
And Mayor Hodges.
Yes, thank you. We have an approved consent agenda. Next item is our public comment. I do welcome our community warmly. We're so glad you took some time to be with us this evening. I'll just remind you that this public comment is for those items that are on the agenda that you would like to speak to. Please state your name and your street. We do limit public comments to 3 minutes. We will do our best to answer any questions you might have within that 3-minute time period. If not, we'll be sure to direct you to make sure that you get your answers at some point thereafter. So with that, I will open up the public comment portion of the meeting. Is there anybody who would like to be heard? Yes, Ms. Bull, please approach the podium.
My name is Kelly Bowl, and I'd like to make a comment about the master plan. I don't think it represents what the residents in this community have expressed on their surveys. I think it's what the MKSK thinks we should want, but it's not reflecting what our community has said it wants. And there is a detailed analysis that's been done where we can see that the priorities in the draft documents do not match the priorities that, in the draft documents that you have, doesn't match the priorities in the survey. So I was hoping that we could have some kind of discussion on why that they don't see.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other comment?
Master plan.
I'm sorry, if you could please approach the podium. No? Other comments? Yes, welcome.
Another subject.
Yes, anything on the agenda, of course.
Well, good evening. My name is Mary Catherine Ashley, and I'm here for looking for 2 suggestions from the council. Our home sits on Jefferson, and there is a terrible developing problem with motorcycles on Sunday. I mean, I don't want to just say Sunday, Saturday and Sunday. And I kind of get it that there's a beautiful expanse to go on the water. And it's not that it's a motorcycle, but it's a motorcycle where they've adjusted things to the muffler. Sometimes the noise is so excessive that you can actually feel the vibration in our yard. And so I did call the police and asked them how to handle it, and their response was that if I called them, they would come and they would see if they could attend to it. and then they could give a ticket for excessive noise. But I'm not gonna know exactly when but it's all day long. And so I don't know if there's something where the city council would think that it's appropriate maybe to have a sign or find out what do other communities do with an excessive noise issue like this. So that's one thing. And the other thing I'm here to ask the council, I think it could be a nice gesture that all of the communities have on their park pass one opportunity to visit another park. So if you visited the Woods Park, you might get to use the slide. If you visited Grosse Pointe Park, maybe you get to go to the theater bus. If you went to the Farms Park, you could play at the beach with children. So I'd like to know, I think it's a good idea, and I think it's a welcoming one. I'd like to know, what does a resident do? Do I start with my own council? Do I write a letter to all 5? I start with you.
Yeah, I'm the city manager. Please definitely send me an email, give me a phone call, and we can start that conversation. I think it's a wonderful comment.
Okay.
And also the council.
No, I'm going to meet with you and have you
Okay.
tell me how to frame the letter.
Okay.
Because I'd like it to be successful. So,
Okay,
all right, that's it.
thank you.
Chief, perhaps you can address that first question in your comments, once your report comes up. Why thank you, Ms. Ashley, for coming tonight. Anybody else? Yes, Ms. Stelma, welcome.
Good evening, my name is Jillian Stelma, I live in Weyburn. And I have brought it to the attention of some of the board members that Charlevoix is progressively less safe for foot traffic and bicycle traffic and vehicle traffic. And I was proposing that we do 4-way stops throughout the entertainment district for Beaconsfield, Lake Point, Maryland, and Weyburn, just to promote safety and make sure that our community has the walkability that we desire.
Thank you. I believe the chief plans to cover that in his report, so stay tuned.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. Anybody else? Mr. Schroeder? Oh,
Hold on. Sorry, thank you. Schroeder, Grosse Pointe Park, about the master plan. I don't know if you guys should take it or not take it. It's for smarter people. I noticed a couple of things on there that are unusual to me. We had a house fire back in 1983 and we had 86. So we had to build a new one. So we have a house that has a garage that is attached on the front of the house. Is our neighbor across the street, which is a much older house, and another neighbor who had a house fire. They had a garage also. According to the master plan, from what I read, is you can't have that anymore built. They want the garages in the back part of the house, the back part of the lot. So, if my house would be built in that, I think my house is all right, it's livable. And then the other thing is, I noticed that some of the things were elevated as far as status goes on the planning master plan, but they had like lower status when it went through, and some other things had higher status and other had lower status. So, I'm not sure what that's all about, but if you guys could look into that before you figure stuff out. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm Glenn Fortuna, I live on 1400 block from the park. I'm just concerned about the change of the voting precinct location. It doesn't affect me personally. I'm semi-retired, I vote absentee, but it affects a lot of people. I know most people can still vote, but fewer will vote. And especially working class people, disenfranchised, people with 2 cars, or with 1 car and two jobs and so forth. It's even my own son and brother-in-law, we live in the same block, 3 miles from Windmill Point, and only a mile and a third from the schools. There's a bus there. There's no way to get to Windmill Point. And also, I looked at the law, the Michigan Bureau of Elections, and it says, establishing polling places, the city council or township board is responsible for determining the location of polling places in the jurisdiction. I haven't been able to find that you guys ever voted on this. I think it seems like it just happened, as far as I know. And we weren't even, there was no public discussion, there was no letter sent, just a new voting card that people don't even notice that it says the new location. So I just think this is wrong from the standpoint of making voting easier by being in your neighborhood. And I know the argument was used, I know one of the schools closed. I know that they say it's more efficient to have everyone in one place. Efficiency for the clerk or the voting personnel is one thing. Efficiency for the citizens who vote is decreased by far to put it all in one far corner. So I'd like you to think about rectifying this. I know it's not in time, 60-day limit on this statute before the August, but in time for the November election, consider moving precincts around the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fortuna. Others? All right, with that, we will close the public comment portion of the meeting. Thank you, City Manager Seisland, for your help with that. Next item on the agenda, we move into reports from our administration. We'll start with the City Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Hodges and members of council. After my report, we'll also have a report from Chief Gerald and also from Chad Craig, our Parks and Recreation Director. So just to give a kind of a highlight of a couple of things going on in our community, the Public Works Building, electrical, carpentry, and other utilities are undergoing construction this time, including fire suppression system. Certain supplies and materials delayed by the supply chain issues going on, holding contractors back a little on time. But we're still looking at, probably about mid-July for completion of this project. I have a park and rec update, but Chad's going to bring that tonight. Regarding alleys, so there's been a lot of discussion about our alley work, what we're looking to do in terms of paving and also separating in those alleys. So the Department of Public Works identified the following alleys that are separated and going out for estimates on repaving. Those include Weyburn and Maryland between Hampton and St. Paul, Maryland and Lake Point between St. Paul and City Hall, and Maryland Weyburn between Berner and Charlevoix. So Tom Jenny is getting quotes on those right now. And interestingly enough, the rumor we're hearing is that in some cases, concrete is actually cheaper than actually blacktop. So we're going to see if that comes true to us, and there could end up being concrete depending on price. So, which is interesting from all everything's been. The alleys that the city can separate, so these would be in-house by our public works team, would be Kirchville North behind the Red Crown, Kirchville North behind the Sprout House, Kirchville South behind the ADT Med Spa, and that alley's already been saw cut in preparation for the work. So that one's actually in process right now of being worked on. So kudos to our DPW team for being able to address those, and we'll continuously keep updating these alleys and looking for further improvements with our road dollars. A lot of discussion's been going on in the community as well. It's important for this city to meet with our partners and with the city of Detroit. So I met with the city of Detroit to discuss further efforts of collaboration, including our code enforcement, alleys, public safety presence. Currently, several blocks of those Weyburn alleys are city of Detroit property, which has created some confusion over the years of maintenance, public safety presence, and infrastructure. How is that divvied up? Who works on it? And such, and public safety presence. The city of Detroit acknowledges that they are considering similar discussions with other communities about their shared borders and responsibilities, which I found really interesting that, there's other communities like us having the same issues that we need to work together to see what we can do to help just clean these up. Because when they drew up the maps, they didn't think of it years ago, but now with all the infrastructure issues, something we probably all should look to clean up a little bit. Director Gerald is working to schedule a meeting with the 5th Precinct Commander in Detroit, and so he'll talk about that. And I'll continue my discussions with the mayor's office. In the meantime, residents of Grosse Pointe Park should not hesitate to call our public safety department if there is a concern in any way in the alley. And Chief Gerald will talk about that. Public safety will review the situation, take a look and see what we can do. In regards to code enforcement, anything in regards to past the alley into Alter Road should be addressed to the city of Detroit or District 4 staff of the city of Detroit for any code enforcement concerns. Because unfortunately, in our case, if there is any code violation that is in the alley or past, that is city of Detroit property, and our code team cannot handle. We can certainly try and pass it along to the District 4 staff, but I would ask the community council certainly for their assistance too when those concerns. Great Lakes Water Authority, Water Service, the city, Public Works, and OHM will be meeting with GLWA later in June to discuss contract reopening data for water service. And so this review involves annual volume analysis, max day flow, peak flow reviewing, yearly data averages, and OHM is currently gathering that for us right now. So hopefully maybe we can find some savings in other areas and using where are our peak hours that we have been currently paying for in our last contract. Water sewer funding as a look ahead. The administration is expecting very soon at the July council meeting to discuss and consider funding of water sewer infrastructure. Baker Tilly is currently working with Jane, Public Works, and OHM to gather further information, as well as understand those funding opportunities at the federal and state levels. That we're really looking at, hoping that these dollars have passed down. We're just simply waiting for Eagle now to hopefully create those programs and see whether that's funded through the Drinking Water Revolving Fund or other grant programs that may be available. I highlighted it in our last council meeting, but the Semcog Planning Assistance Program. So this was actually for bioswales and rain garden in front of City Hall, right by the entrance. So our city forester, Brian Coulter, actually submitted a proposal. And so we're waiting anxiously from Semcog to see if that comes through. Vikas, did you mention that beautification about that one?
Just barely.
Okay, all right. So obviously we're waiting on that, and we'll see what happens with that. So just green infrastructure. And then going back to beautification as well, and I'm really proud of it. The Michigan Green Communities Challenge, it's a program they've recognized 44 counties, cities, townships, and villages that took part in this challenge every year for their environmental leadership. These communities completed actions in 2021 related to energy efficiency, climate adaptation, resilience, recycling, environmental justice, and more. 10 communities received bronze certification, 12 received silver, 22 received gold. The city was awarded the bronze status by the Michigan Green Communities Challenge. And this is something that I know Brian Coulter and I know Councilmember Raylan also are working with the Beautification Commission, and we can hopefully achieve that silver status. And then we can end up going better to the gold status. So that just speaks to how much we care for our environment here and looking at all the trees and the passion we have for it. So kudos to everybody for all their hard work and just past of the gem that we have in this park. The Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. So this was a program that the city applied for back in January for looking at the inland seawall at Windmill Point as well as the outer seawall. See if there's any funding opportunities there, and then also showing up Patterson Park Boardwalk and that shoreline. So what this program does is they try and help you find federal dollars, and apply to. So if you're competitive enough, Mr. Craig and I met with representatives from this group and reviewed proposals by the city. They said they were impressed, so I'll take that as a good word. We'll see. And next steps, including providing some more supplemental information, and we'll meet with them again in July or August. So that'll be coming up. As well, the Personnel Committee did meet and reviewed city attorney proposals. We're going to be setting up soon for meetings to conduct those proposals. FEMA funding, just a quick update. So this was in regards to the FEMA cleanup for the June storm event last year. We submitted our information. FEMA has follow-up questions and requesting supplemental information. So just kind of going the back and forth between our departments. And then last but not least, expect at the July council meeting that Mr. Rothy as well have been working on liability insurance and getting proposals that we'll bring to you at the July council meeting for the city insurance. That being said, that's all I have. If there's any questions, otherwise next it'll be Chief Gerald.
Questions for city manager? Yes, Councilmember Rowland?
Thanks a lot, Nick.
Yeah.
Regarding the alleys, do we have any way of finding out which alleys are remaining to be first separated and then second repaved?
So like of all the alleys, which ones need to be and
timeline or plan of what's next.
We may have, I have not seen a document, highlighting those per se, which ones, but certainly, our DPW team knows which ones to address. So that's something as part of our capital improvement plan. I would expect that we would highlight after these, every others that need to be addressed.
It's been a very hot topic.
Right.
It'd be good just to get a plan on, so the residents know that we have these addressed. Right, these are our features. I think we did it with roads before.
Right, it'll be important. So not only the roads, the alleys, but let's look at putting water main, lead service lines, sewers. So you just you're able to almost look at your street or your alley and say, hey, I'm gonna have these done.
So they don't have to reach out to you and say, hey, when are we?
Have it online, right there, explaining exactly, and like you said, the road to and curves and permanent. So that's something I've tasked our public works team, and Mr. Rothy is assisting with them right now. And not only on the public works side, but also with public safety, park and rec, and other opportunities. So we can just have that comprehensive.
And TIFA dollars have been allocated as well for.
Yes, there is some TIFA dollars.
So there's.
Yes.
Other questions? City Manager Sisson, I believe we are also going to alert the community to vacancies on boards and commissions.
Yes.
We have the Downtown Development Authority has a vacancy.
Yes,
as
there's
well
one
as
vacancy there.
The
Yep.
Parks and, well, go ahead, I'll let you update.
Yes, so we have one vacancy on our Downtown Development Authority board. We also have one vacancy on our ethics board right now, and I believe we have two recreation that are available. So I would expect at the next city council meeting that they would look to appoint those positions by the mayor and council. So we'll advertise that online to the community, and it'll be available on our city website, fill out a commission application, and
So those in the community that are interested in community service, this is a great opportunity for that. We ask that you go to the website and there's a application that you can complete and submit that as soon as possible so that we can have an opportunity to engage with you prior to the next council meeting so that those recommendations can be made for this body to consider and appoint. So, and each of them have their own specific requirements. So we'll have to figure that out too to make sure you're in alignment. But that would be the first step. So please take that step on behalf of the community. Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
We do have a lot of folks that understand that put in applications that are on the standby. Have they been contacted about the vacancies as well?
so we'll see if they've already applied for various. So what we could do, what we have done so far is if you have applied within the last 2 years, we keep your applications on file.
Okay.
And so any of those that are past 2 years, then we discard. But at this moment, any of those that have been applying, I believe, this would probably be maybe in the last 1.5 or 2 years, we've acknowledged we've received their application. But if you're asking, can we reach out to them right now? Yeah, well, that's something we could do.
All right, moving on, the chief and I did discuss that there might be better flow if we delay his report to after Mr. Craig so that we can then move into our resolution. So Mr. Craig, welcome. Did you need to say anything to set this up or is?
No, go ahead, Chad.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for allowing me some time this evening to give you an update from Parks and Recreation. Nick, would you like me to touch on the mowing and park maintenance or just those?
I got that later in the council
Okay,
agenda.
perfect. We'll start off with swim lessons. We've been able to put that program together this year. I'm super excited about it. Last year, we were able to offer 60 spots per session. This time, we're actually going to 6. We're about 2/3 of the way full for registration for session 1. That will be 4 classes of level 1, 4 classes of level 2, and 4 classes of level 3. 8 individuals per class with 2 instructors in each class. So definitely more than enough staff to be able to help them with everything that they need. We're also close to putting together a semi-private lesson program as well, where we can have something that's geared towards those individuals that work that are unable to do a Monday through Friday, 10 to noon type of schedule and more something in the evening and on the weekends, which we haven't really been able to do in the past. So I'm also hoping that we can get that out within the next week or so. Hopefully, once we look it over, review everything, to make sure we've got a plan in place. I think that's going to be helpful. Maybe not so much this first summer, but for years to come, we'll be able to offer something that we haven't been able to do in the past, which I think will go along with residents. We're very close on online ticket for the movie theaters. We've been in communication with Rusty from Sensible Cinema. There's 4 clients that are currently in front of us before they will come out and do the installation and upgrades for us. Most of those clients in front of us are fairly simple projects, so it's usually 1 to 2 weeks per client that they have. If they're as easy as I think they are, that can move anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks, depending on how those jobs go for them. So online movie tickets will be coming very soon. We're excited about that opportunity. Will definitely help us. You can see right now we've got Jurassic World and Top Gun, so 2 very popular movies. Having online ticket services available will only help in people getting the opportunity to be able to purchase those tickets. playscapes. That's both at Patterson Park and Windmill Point Park. I've been in communication with Leathers and Associates. They were the vendor that originally helped us put the playscape in at Patterson Park. And we're discussing the opportunity to have them bring a technician in to give us an assessment of the status of the playscape at Patterson Park. Whether that is upgrades or a complete rebuild, demolish and rebuild, try to keep areas if we can. So they're gonna come out and see that if that's improved and we're able to go that route. I've also been in touch with Snyder Recreation already, who is currently working on a proposal if we were to place that area. And not only that, but the play structures that you've seen at Windmill Point Park as well. They've given us some ideas for those areas already at Windmill. And that's kind of what I'm hoping with talking with Nick a little bit to possibly make that like a 2 to 3 year plan each fiscal year, try to replace 1 or 2 items at Windmill Point Park until there's further discussions that are made at Patterson Park. We also have Sinclair Recreation, Miracle Midwest, Mid-States Recreation and Landscape Structures that I'm also working with to see what plans they can bring to us, what proposals they have for the playscape at Patterson Park as well, and see what opportunities we have there. So 4 or 5 big vendors around the area is what I want to bring in to see what opportunities we have for upgrades or remodels and renovations upgrades, things like that. I'll touch on some future programming as well. I'm hoping by fall we'll be able to implement in a pickleball league, which will be a co-ed league, a men's league, and a women's league that will take place indoors at Windmill Point Park, and the 3 courts that we have in the gymnasium. Sundays most likely would be a co-ed. Mondays night would be a women's league, and Tuesdays would be a men's league. I'm also working with Councilman Morellen to implement a basketball league. It could be men's. We could potentially look at a co-ed. We're also looking at some camps and clinics throughout the summer as well, and those are all things that we could probably do year-round. Just depending on what the interest level is and what else we have, what other sports are going on during those seasons. But our goal is to have the gymnasium as busy with activities as we can. We don't want to completely eliminate court rental time and things like that, but the more programs and activities we put in there, we're going to give opportunities for our residents to be able to utilize that and join some new leagues and make some new friends, things like that. I'm also looking to bring back some type of infant and toddler classes. We used to have some of those, Pipsqueaks Bee, Tiny Tots. I'm looking to bring some of those programs back as well. I'm also looking at some future comedy nights, some family entertainment in the theaters on off nights. Nights that we don't have movies going on, bringing in something like that, partnering with some local restaurants, things like that. And, couples come down or families come down, depending on what it is, whether it's a very popular in the state magician, or again, 3 or 4 up and coming comedians or something like that, beverages, drinks, popcorn, you name it, partner with a local restaurant, see what we can put on together, dinner and comedy. With that, there's also been discussion of trying to implement in some birthday type of programs. So do some rentals from the gymnasium, include some party packages of that, whether it's drinking popcorn or inflatables or things like that, partnering with some other vendors to give them some birthday opportunities and make some package deals, things like that. Same goes with the movie theaters as well, giving them packages on beverages. And here's a certain amount of tickets you get, things like that, that would be included, so you don't have to worry about all the extras. And that will go along with opening up the McKeever Lounge to do rentals in that room as well. During the pandemic, we had to extend the fitness center into that area. We've now been able to move that back out, so rentals will start back up in there as well. Tennis lessons is my next one. We've got 6 weeks of tennis lessons. We are experiencing a bit of a delay for the last couple of months in the material that we were looking for the tennis court upgrades. They can't keep giving them updates, but it's currently in a shipping container making its way to the southern states, and then will be loaded up and shipped up to us as soon as they can get their hands on it. The vendor that I've been working with is extremely apologetic. This has never happened, since he's had the business open, and it's just one of those unfortunate events. It seems sometimes when it rains, it pours. But he does feel bad that the plan is right now, they are going to basically do all the prep work and make repairs to the courts, hopefully by the end of this week. Also install the new poles, the nets, and actually repaint the surface that would be affected by their work. So it actually looks like they are full on fairly new courts. You won't see any of the cracked lines and concrete repairs, things like that. They're gonna paint all the areas that will be affected by it. And hopefully have enough days in the first week that we are off from it. It'll give them about 8 days to complete the project. If he feels fairly confident that we won't have to shut down any tennis lessons or anything like that, they'll be able to do the work that they need to and be back out to start up the next 2 weeks of tennis lessons when we are finished with that project. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed and hoping that the weather is on our side, and I think we'll be good to go. I'm also looking into potential youth dance programs. There's been some interest in some individuals reaching out to me. There's a lot of opportunities around us, but there's something that makes sense to us in being able to either utilize the gymnasium or the Tompkins Community Center. It would be nice to be able to offer some type of small program in there as well. Again, it's in your backyard, it's close, make the time to come down. Same with potential theater programs. There are all some things we're considering. I've again had some individuals that have reached out to me that they'd be interested in putting on some type of either 6-week program or summer program or something like that. Again, if we can find the space, or even if it's outdoors and we have a backup plan, I'm all ears to anything that goes for other residents in the community, council members. If you guys have an idea or something I haven't covered, send it my way. Some of it, if we can't do in-house, there's got to be a group out there that will subcontract with us, and it's another opportunity. Which leads me to my last item, which would be getting our summer camps back, our day camps, things like that. Whether it's something we can do in-house next summer, or again, we subcontract, that is a big goal of mine to be able to bring that back. It's been going on, 2-3 years now since we've had that, so that's a big goal of mine is to have that back next year. I will touch on the dog park next. We are looking, after discussions with Dane and his team from Backer, we're considering doing AstroTurf in the first third of the dog park, basically breaking it into 3 sections. And the second section, or second third, would be the valley area. And we're looking to potentially do crushed gravel throughout that, kind of like a river that you'll see around the perimeter of the dog park as well. He feels that would be a nice item that wouldn't be an issue for the dogs. People would be able to walk on it without any issues, tripping, falling, things like that. The dogs won't be as interested in digging at it or things like that, compared to mulch or some other items where they might dig it up more or try to eat it or things like that. This could still be aesthetically pleasing, and then going and sticking with the natural grass on the back there. We've also had a small brief discussion about possibly implementing in an obstacle course there as well, as long as I don't want to take away from too much of the open space. So if we can strategically set it up that it doesn't take up too much open space, I think it would be a nice little feature to add into that park. It's already a beautiful park. We had a few more things, and I think it'll be top notch, if not one of the best anywhere around. So there's a few issues we ran into, but most of them are good. I mean, due to the issue of wanting the AstroTurf in the front, it's because of the conditions, but a lot of that means traffic. So it means we're getting a lot of traffic in that dog park. The people like it, people use it, and most days they're still out there in their boots and everything else, even when it's raining, because it's become a daily event for them, and a lot of friendships and relationships have come from that, which was exactly what I was hoping for. A volunteer assistant for the gardens. Nick mentioned that an assistance program. I've been in touch with Brian Coulter from the Beautification Commission. We are looking at a potential idea, something similar to what they do in Grosse Pointe Shores, where they will either partner with residents or businesses, and you can either potentially sponsor some type of a memorial garden, or just as a business sponsor that for the summer, whether it could potentially be hands-on, or you would be basically helping with the funds to have the work done in that garden, but you would be the sponsor for a small nameplate, things like that. Again, whether it's a memorial for a loved one or just a business wanting to help for that year, and kind of partnering up with us. We're in the early stages of it, and Brian's reached out to this individual who's been in charge of it over the shores for quite a few years. It's just a little bit of phone tag right now, but I believe we'll be able to have something put in place soon. And that also goes with some other clubs that are out there, and some residents that I've met with myself that have some interest in kind of helping us out with that, taking that on, and seeing what they can do to give us some assistance and help us through some tough times as well, or just being short-staffed in some areas and not being able to get to all the areas that we want to in the park. So it's nice that that has come from the community members as well, that there's interest on there and to help us out. The Charlotte Street Party that kicked off this last Saturday, if you were down there, you noticed that it was a huge success, which is what we're always hoping for. I would say it's probably one of our biggest, if not the biggest, that we've had yet. So everybody was definitely ready to kick off the summer. That's exactly what we wanted. Fun music, food, beverages, and everybody being able to get together for a night and just kind of say hello to summer. So the next two look to hopefully be even better. We'll have a country night in July, and a throwback night again in September. So we'll have some more fun activities and things like that planned. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the summer with the Charlotte events. I think they're going to be a nice attraction. Will really help out the business on those nights down there. And then I'll briefly, just to finish up, I'll touch on After Six on Kercheval. Our first one is on June 25th. I probably say this every year, but this is probably the best After Six on Kercheval we're going to have this summer, as we have for the first one we have planned is Your Generation. They're incredibly popular band in the metro area. There's 8 members. I'm hoping that the stage is big enough for them. But they cover just about anything and everything that I think the people are going to really love. If you liked any of the music of the last one, you're going to love it here because they cover all over the place and everything, and you will want to be dancing before the night's over. We'll also have a 200-foot zip line, and we'll have a dunk tank with the Defer Brownie Troop. So they'll be raising money for their troop, and also a Dixie Twister, which is basically like a swing that will go around on multiple riders on that. In June, we'll be bringing back the Randy Brett Band. We've got a Velocity Super Slide, which is a 40 or 60 foot length slide for multiple people to be able to slide down. And we'll also be bringing in Lucky Strike luxury bowling. So you'll be able to sign up for that for a few minutes. It might be something that you bring to another party or something down the road. So it'll be a nice thing to see everybody sign up genius type of thing. 15, 20 minutes. You've got some sofas and big screens in there and a couple of bowling lanes. So it'll be a nice little VIP party for you until you go to the next event. And then in August, we're going to go out with a bang. We're going to bring in a 40-foot Ferris wheel. And we're also going to bring in Ropophobia, which is a mobile high ropes course. So it'll be something fun for everybody. In Wednesday, or the July event, we have a local baseball team that'll be the dunk tank that night. And then the August one, we will have the Grosse Pointe Moms Club and Sunny Days that will be heading up that one. So that is pretty much everything that I have, but I wanted to update you guys on this evening. If you have any questions or anything for me, that would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. I'd also like to acknowledge Councilmember McMillan, who's the liaison of the Recreation Commission, and Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield to the Marina. And then I also see we have one of our Recreation Commission board members here, Mike Bannon. So welcome and thank you for your service. I don't know if either of you have anything you'd like to add to that update, or if not, if there are any questions from any of you, I'd be happy to entertain those as well.
Just a few questions. I know back at the last Park and Rec Commission, you had stated that we were probably looking at possibly opening up the pool part-time and not being able to offer swim lessons. So I guess what kind of has changed in the last 2-3 weeks?
Just been able to bring the staff on. We were hiring staff the night before we even opened the pool. We've been continuing to do so. So Friday night we were still hiring people on, opening Saturday morning. So just being able to bring those individuals on, it was, a few weeks before that, we didn't have enough at that time to think we were going to be able to open the pool 7 days a week. So in fact, number one priority was make sure we could get the pool open as many days a week as we could. That we accomplished that one. Number two was to make sure we could do the swim lessons and do them in a safe fashion as well. We wanted to make sure they would be safe and successful. Just because an individual is 15 years old, being certified to be a lifeguard doesn't necessarily mean they'll be the best individual to work with 4 or 5 4-year-olds. So we wanted to make sure that we could put a team in place that we felt confident with. By doing the 2 instructors, we have basically a more seasoned instructor working with a younger instructor. So that way, once that individual leaves and the other ones return, they've got a year or 2 underneath their belt. And the same thing, they can be a mentor and teach someone else as we go into that program and build it back up to what it was before.
Right, a few other follow-up, just because I keep hitting the head of the dog and the elephant in the room is that we are in a deficit. And I do like the ideas that you're presenting, and I think they're great that you're looking at some revenue, but I'm hearing a lot of we're looking into. Are you in the Parks Recreation Commission actually setting a plan to do these things, or are we just talking about this?
There's nothing official that has been said with that, mostly because they're things that I feel I will implement in either time before we get to that next meeting or things like that, that they'll be put in place. I feel confident that by next summer, we'll have summer camp back in place. I feel by the fall, we'll have basketball programs, we'll have things like that, where I don't necessarily need to have that meeting and put in place. I've already got the ball rolling with it, and I feel like they'll be implemented in a matter of time.
And I guess, what are we doing in marketing our lab and summer activities?
We're going to be working on that too, at least every day, if not every couple of days, depending on what's already being scheduled. I'm going to be working with staff to make sure that we get together each day and say, all right, what have we not touched base on in a while? What do we need to put out there? What's coming up that we forgot about? What sale or special is coming up in the winter months when students are coming home from college for the fitness center? Again, have we pushed out anything lately for the private rentals? Opening the McKeever Lounge back up for parties and rentals and things like that is something, again, we'll create something for and kind of hammer those things out that maybe it seems like everybody knows you've got a fitness center, but actually there's a lot of people that don't realize we have a fitness center, or that you can rent out the movie theater, things like that, or the gym time. Again, we might limit some of that rental time in the gym, but if we're running a basketball league or an indoor volleyball league, dodgeball, that will be supplemental or nice to have instead of just the handful of people for a half hour rental. We're bringing in 40 to 100 people for a league or something like that. So I see those revenues helping us a bit more than maybe a private rental. Still allow some time for that. But what my goal is to basically the only time I don't want to see people in the gymnasium is so I would like to keep it as busy as possible. It's an activity center. I want to see a lot of activity going on in that building.
All right, a few more. A couple, you mentioned some updates to the dog park. I'm just really concerned. I mean, the obstacle course and AstroTurf sounds pricey.
Once you do, again, those would most likely come from Backer Landscaping. And once you put the AstroTurf in, the lifespan of that will.
I get that.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So that wasn't budgeted items.
No, it would not be a budgeted item. It would not be something that the city, a cost or fee. Again, it's still in the discussion stages of seeing if that's something that they're going to be able to do, help us out with. And I haven't got a firm answer, but I'll be following up with Dave this week.
Yeah, no, and I applaud you because, I mean, you have a lot of passion for these, Charlevoix events and, the After Six, which I think are beautiful community events. I guess my biggest question is, what would your overall assessment of the status of our parks be as we sit right now?
Not where I want them to be. That's to be quite honest. The last couple of years have been a struggle. The start of COVID, myself and Chris Delman were right out there in the park, trimming, mowing, whatever we could do to make sure that we could keep the parks to the best that we were able to. It's basically been a struggle for us since then. Things have not gotten really any easier for us with staff, things like that. And I want to make sure that I put the time and effort. Nick will touch on it a little bit later, but we have made some changes that I believe will allow us to be more successful and use some more tools and resources that the city has to get the aesthetics and looks of our park back to where the standard has been and the standard that we want it to be, that I want it to be. I don't want those phone calls or emails of people either embarrassed or not happy with the current status of the park grounds. Parks is just as important to me as recreation, vice versa. They're one and the same to me. But we've got some tools and some individuals set up now that I believe will help me be more successful with the park grounds and things like that. So it will allow me more time to focus on the recreation side and programming and that of the park to help with some of those programs we've lost, but also be able to, with a quick phone call or email or something like that, get some issues, attended to that in the past may have taken a couple of weeks or not even been able to get to, depending on the manpower and projects that we already have in play. It was more so of being able to figure out which item can we get to, what project can we get to, and what goes on the back burner. And hopefully with some of our new ideas and some things we've implemented, I don't think that will be an issue for us anymore. So I'm looking forward to the plan.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because I've been feeling a lot of calls lately about the condition of them, and I think we need to focus there, in my opinion, as well as others.
Absolutely. And then with
and I
that,
appreciate you here.
Yeah.
My last and final is, do we have, I know we have gate guard staff on the weekends, but I'm hearing a lot of complaints about parties at Tompkins Center. Is your staff, you guys work the weekends sometimes? You rotate or?
for a lot of events, yes. As for overseeing the rental of the Tompkins Center, no, that's on the gate guards. They oversee that. We could potentially look into bringing a position on for that, but that will definitely add to the payroll and costs and fees associated with that, with having a gate guard already there and able to attend to something like that. So maybe if you would like to email me some of the concerns that you have regarding
Yeah, I will.
with that. Another thing we need to take into consideration is with the looks of the parks, things like that, we also have to realize we have some aging facilities as well. So although there's things I would like to do, whether that's an upgrade to the restrooms or concession stand or things like that, when we're in the budget that we're currently in right now, that's goes more on a wish list than it does to actually, build something new like that. I'm not hoping that that's something like in a 3 to 5 year plan where we're able to do something like that, make some upgrades, some significant upgrades. Other than that, most of my focus has been towards window replacement, door replacement, things, smaller things like control painting some areas, touching those things up to make them look a little more appealing to the eye until we can actually get some big projects done.
Well, appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Other questions, Councilman Peter?
First off, thank you very much. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate getting the update on what's going on. I'm very happy that we're modernizing, especially with the websites and obviously with, I'm sure you're in touch with communications and assistant city manager, that we're consolidating as you overhaul everything. I think that's going to help dramatically to help us, utilize the assets that we have. Question for you, the fitness center, what's the utilization right now looking like? Are we recovering?
Yeah, the numbers are actually climbing up, both in the movie theaters and the fitness center. Our numbers are coming back up again, which is what we were hoping for. It'll be nice to see that, I would think, in another 3 to 4 months, and even in the year, give us a year. Hopefully we're back to the new normal, and then really take a look at the fitness center at the, middle of the summer next year. Let's go from right now and look at it next year. I think everybody will be quite happy or pleased with the numbers of where we're back with the memberships.
Good, and especially with messaging. So we're trying to overhaul a lot of different things. So I want to make sure we don't all
Yeah,
kind of
and
consolidate.
that can sometimes be the challenge when you have multiple people that can work with Constant Contact and work with Facebook. Got to check and make sure that something didn't just go out, whether public safety put something out or there's something with the fitness membership or just a city announcement. And then I want to put out, hey, the volleyball league. Well, we just kind of put 2 or 3 things out that day. Okay, I'll put it out until tomorrow. It's just having that many people work on it. You just got to make sure that we are strategically aware of what everybody else is doing.
Again, it's a two-way street as well. If we can give any help, again, success with the parks and again, the different assets the city has, that's all going to go in the same pot. So, just let us know what we can do to help.
Thank you very much.
Other questions? Yes, Councilman Berlin.
I want to say thanks as well. This update's very important. If you can do it every 3 months, that'd be awesome. And I want to reiterate what Councilmember Coughlin said about the condition. I know you're thinking outside the box extremely well. Like Councilmember Peter said, if there's any way we can support you, you've been really easy to work with. Trying to do planning, you're always open. It seems like you'd be working 7 days a week with all the things coming up. So
It's a busy time of the year for sure.
yeah, maybe we do need to up that budget next year since it is something that's affecting so many residents. It's hit us so much. Councilmember Coughlin mentioned how many emails he's getting. I'm getting tons of emails too. The parks are our number one used asset. Public safety is the number one budget. Maybe we should make parks a little more adding into that. So that will help you out and make something every resident will appreciate.
I believe we're rebounding in some areas that will be helpful. I believe with being able to implement something again like our day camps,
Yeah.
I think we won't have trouble doing that.
And these revenue generating programs that we've been talking about, and
Jim.
really gonna help. It shouldn't remain.
Yeah, what our goal is to make it each program, the least in a way staff involved. And what I mean by that more so is how many staff members are working it, who needs to be there, where's this at? If it really kind of runs itself, which like a basketball league could or something like that, it's limited on what you need down there. You just have to work out the fine details. Do you call fouls? Do you keep a score? Or is it more of just a fun recreational type activity? Again, something with like the pickleball league, and we basically just have an individual there staffed on it. With the team fees and individual fees and stuff like that. All you're really looking for is helping them out with any issues, an injury, or keeping a score at the end of the night. So it's not something that has to be overly, time investment or anything like that for a staff member, but we could also potentially tap on south ending for the community service hours, things like that. We could have an individual down there getting a few community service hours just by keeping score of the men's league that night. Or same thing, take out scores at the end of the night, just remind people. Doesn't matter if you have a staff member there or not, sometimes if they're having a good enough time and they get in conversation, they're walking out the building without talking. Anyways, and you track them down in an email or they're calling you the next week or the day before the league saying, I forgot to tell you something last week. So it's been great. The same thing, the volleyball league, we got 20 teams, we maxed out this year. They're all excited to play. It's the easiest thing. They go, they play, they come over, they report the score at the gatehouse and they're done.
It's self-smart service. Yep, it doesn't cost us anything.
Exactly.
The one thing that I need to add is, do we have a adequate first aid kit at that front desk?
We should have, everything should be already stocked to go for this summer.
That's the only thing I've seen shortfall at other places.
We've been
Ice
ordering.
packs and Band-Aids.
As we got ready for the pool season, we did every other area. So the vehicles, the work vehicles, the gatehouses, things like that should all be restocked now.
Thanks. And thanks again for thinking outside the box and energizing and stuff.
Other questions?
No questions, just a comment.
Yes.
About the dog park. I'm one of those that has my boots on and I'm making lots of friends at the dog park. I'm very excited to hear that there will be some addressing of the mudded areas. If we can get Becker to help with the AstroTurf, that would be a great idea. I would just throw in a suggestion if there's
Sure.
a place to water
Again,
off.
it's no promises or
It is,
anything
of
like
course.
that. But we've been having those conversations and I know Dane and his team have gone to other dog parks during the times that we've experienced the issues, so they could relate to us and see if is it just our park that we're facing that issue. And the 3 or 4 places that they reported back to me all faced the same challenge. It was muddy in this area, no grass over there, a little bit dug there. So they're like, it's just one of those things.
The
that's kind
natural
of-
process of it and the
Yes.
learning.
So it's, again, in a way, it's a good problem to have because it means everybody is going there, they're utilizing, they're using it. Again, people that may have never even met each other, have now built great relationships, and it's another way for us to be able to program and bring people together.
It's another community within the community and it's,
Exactly.
and dog lovers are like,
Yep, they're get together groups, the morning groups and the happy hour groups.
that's
Like
true.
that, so it's nice to see the groups that have been able to get together and take advantage of things. I don't wanna see it go south, I wanna go get those issues rectified sooner than later and continue to use it.
And I would just also reiterate around the upkeep at the park is really important. When we don't have budget to do new programs, then it's really important that we just use the elbow grease that we have and maybe some paint and some other things. just to
Absolutely.
upgrade
Yep, and even if
what's
we,
already there.
few residents have even made mention of that, of
Yes.
they could get some people together and give them a project, do them an item, something like that. And if a staff member can help work them and lead them through the project, I think that would be great. It's
Thank
nice
you,
to see you interested in that as well.
Ken, I know we need to,
And I guess my just final comment, that's where I was kind of getting to, is that you should be planning 2023 right now. It's the Park and Rec Commission working with you and your city administration to get those plans in place, because you know, these are great ideas, but we need to start thinking forward instead of reactionary. Sure. And it's, I mean, this season's gone, right? And I think we need to make sure that that commission is working closely with his, make sure that we get these ideas.
Yeah, we did sit down, I think, January, February, to set goals. And I think it's time to review those.
Sure.
I think we did a 1-3. And to our city manager, so maybe you and I could sit back down and go through those again and maybe reprioritize.
yeah, we do need to move the meeting along.
Yes,
I
thank
know another big point of discussion was the status of the kiddie pool. Could you just give us a quick
Yeah,
update on that?
it was, we shut it down on, oh gosh, now I'm trying to remember the day, we shut, Tuesday, right after Memorial Day, and we actually were able to open it up the following Monday. We did 2 days of dry time, so Saturday, Sunday was the dry time, and it's been back open since.
So best case scenario,
So,
awesome,
Yep,
great,
we're
thank
good, it's fast, and I know, again, I'll work with some of my stuff on, we put no timetable, we probably shouldn't put that, but at that time, until the contractor had actually seen what the damages were, I didn't wanna say, hey, we're gonna be okay in it'll be closed 3 to 4 days, and then it turns into 2 weeks. I didn't think it would ever be on that kind of a timetable. I didn't wanna come right off and say, hey, it's just closed down for 48 hours, and we'll go open back up, or it's down for a week and a half. I wanna make sure I got an answer, and then we could give an update after we have the contractor out.
And if people do have concerns, how do they reach you?
Any way they want, they can email me, it's just craigc@grosspointpark.org. They can call me at 313-822-2812, extension 200. Or call the front desk, or call Chris Delmage or anyone else, and they can transfer you over.
Awesome, great, thank you for being accessible. I will also say we were at a graduation party at Tompkins yesterday, and they couldn't have been more thrilled with the staff that was working with them, so.
It's great to
Please thank them for that. And
Absolutely.
Member Rellin said, you're the second only to public safety, most important public facing department that you're at the helm of. So that's why people choose to live here, is because of our park. So thank you for your leadership, and just know we're here to support you, and we need to make sure that they remain a priority. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you, everyone. And then just to finish on that, I know we talked about the importance of the things, and I just wanted to make mention that we do have anywhere from gate staff that have stepped in is park maintenance, things like that, to be able to help us with the setup of the Tompkins Center. Maintenance staff that has gone in and cleaned the movie theaters, mopped the gymnasium. Really, any area you could, the lab and center has been picking up at any shifts that they could to help out with things like that. So our staff is somewhat in their own way being cross-trained to learn some of the things and help us out with stuff, and knowing that they're taking pride in their jobs in the operations of the parks to be able to step in and help us out in other areas that they can. And really without that, we'd potentially be in a worse spot. So again, I appreciate my everything that they do for the parks, the residents, things like that. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Chief Gerald, you're up. Welcome, good evening.
Evening, Mayor, Council, and community at large. So I have a couple of items I want to go over tonight. First of all, the noise complaint that was talked about by a resident earlier, I've already addressed that. I gave her my card and answered.
Good, thank you.
So the first thing I want to talk about is we are not expecting any trouble here tonight. Officers are here to show support for the Cardin family and Leo, so that's why they're here tonight. But Lieutenant Conair was at the fire that day on Saturday. So the first item I'm going to talk about is gun violence and mass shootings. The horrible events such as that happened in Uvalde, Texas, always bring an awareness, although usually far too brief, to the issues of guns and preparedness. So I want the public to know this department trains for these types of events and is prepared to act in any circumstance. We work very closely with the Grosse Pointe schools on educating staff, students on what to do in an active shooter situation. And we're constantly reviewing our responses and security protocols with the schools. I use unfortunate events like this and also the one from Grand Rapids as an opportunity to engage in meaningful conversation with not only my command staff, but with the officers. So I assign these types of events out and ask my command officers to review the circumstances of the particular incident and then have meaningful conversation with their officers. It just gives us an opportunity to talk about how we would do things maybe differently, maybe not differently, but it reinforces that, and we use those opportunities whenever we can. I can tell you from a professional standpoint, I don't think the answer to mass shootings, especially in schools, is putting more guns in schools, such as arming teachers. My son is a teacher. You don't want to have a gun in his hand, I can tell you that for sure. But he is definitely against that type of an approach. The best approach is and always has been prevention, not intervention. As I've said many times before, if the police are showing up, bad things have already happened. So I'll repeat what I've always said, which is if you see something, say something. No matter how innocuous or benign you think it might be, or how fleeting that little uneasy feeling you got was, say something to somebody. Tell a teacher, parents, the police, tell somebody so we can look into it. Next item is stop signs. There's been some conversation about stop signs from the community, and I have also talked to some of the council. So I just wanted to discuss with you the conditions that warrant a four-way stop sign. One of them is that the volume of traffic is roughly equal on both intersecting streets. I'm talking about four-way stops being placed along Kirchable and on Charlevoix. Another consideration is if it's a location that's planned for a traffic signal in the near future. Another consideration, vehicular traffic at the intersection averages 300 vehicles an hour for an 8-hour period. Or a combination of vehicle, pedestrian, and bicycle traffic averaging a total of 200 units per hour for an 8-hour period. So it's interesting that I've got some of these inquiries from the community and from council because Mr. Seisland and I talked about this several months ago. We were talking about the crossings on Charlevoix during the peak times of the bars and things like that, and also on Kirchhoff. So after our conversation, I said, well, let's do a traffic study. So we put the traffic control or traffic measuring devices up on both of those streets. So on Charlevoix, we left it up for 7 days. There's a total volume of 6,633 cars in 3 days. Average daily volume of 947. If you go back to the considerations, we need 300 an hour for 8 hours. We don't come anywhere near to meet that. So then we looked at speeds. The average speed on Charlevoix at Beaconsfield was 18. The 50th percentile speed was 19, and the 85th percentile speed was 23. So then we looked at Kirchhoff. As you can expect, on Kirchhoff, there was slightly more traffic at a total volume of 11,995, so just under 12,000 in the same 7-day period. The average speed, 14. The 50th percentile, 15. The 85th percentile, 20. Again, the traffic studies do not support 4-way stops along Kirchhoff or along Charlevoix. Now, that being said, as a council, you can decide whatever you want to decide. I'm just saying from a traffic safety standpoint, they're just not warranted. Do I have any questions on that before I move on?
Thanks, Chief. So the data you're mentioning is all volume. I don't think anyone here would disagree we don't have the volume here to have 4-way stops. It's more about safety. So if you try to pull out at Beaconsfield onto Charlevoix in a car, it's hard. So maybe we talked about bump outs. Bump outs give you that extra 3 feet of pulling out past that stop sign to be able to see if a car is coming. If you do that at Lake Point as well, it's just hard to turn. And then in the mornings with school, I know Beaconsfield and Kirchhoff is very dangerous because kids are riding their bike. They may not even stop. They just go right through that street. Obviously, you can't avoid that, but it's just a matter of increasing the safety in these areas. So as a pedestrian, we rode our bikes to the Charlevoix after 6 party or the dark party, and we're looking around and there's other things there that need to be improved too, like sidewalk safety and things. There's things popping around the sidewalk, but that's volume that you mentioned, and no one's gonna disagree with that. But is there any ideas you have on how to improve safety?
So, yeah.
Would it be more appropriate for you, maybe for the public safety committee to review this rather than doing too deep of a dive right now, knowing we got a full agenda and maybe, any of us who have
I'd be okay with that.
questions and concerns or members of the community, Ms. Stallman, that could come to that committee meeting and get a little more earnest discussion about it rather than trying to solve it right now. Would that be all right?
That sounds great.
Okay, great.
So should we reach out to schedule a meeting?
Well, I think
We have one next month?
We're talking about one, I don't know what day we decided on yet.
We haven't decided on a date yet.
Okay. I'll work with Councilman.
When you do, yeah, just make sure we advertise it.
Yeah.
That will be a topic of conversation for the public to come.
Right.
Because there's just more than just the Charlotte.
Thanks, Chief.
So, talking about safety in the schools, we're still looking at the mid-block crossing between DeFur Elementary and Pierce Middle School. I had a Zoom meeting with Semcog to discuss different ways to improve the safety of that crossing. We're in the process of setting up an in-person site visit from Semcog to come and look at different options. They threw a whole bunch at me, and so we want to take a look at it and then possibly apply for some funding through Semcog.
Speaking of that same intersection, you were mentioning about installing a button for the crossing. That'll be with Semcog as well.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things that we leap into the 21st century. As far as technology goes, there's a lot of things we can get done.
We need to get to the 20th century.
It's just cost, that's all.
Thank you.
Mr. Seisland touched on it. I'm going to touch on it briefly, alley safety. I am setting up a meeting with the command staff for the 5th precinct to discuss some issues with the alley. We'll see what we can come up with. My staff has been instructed to respond to in-progress crimes and take appropriate action. Now, that being said, I think it's important for everybody to remember that alley is not ours. It is the city of Detroit. If we went to that for an in-progress crime, let's say it's a robbery in progress, and we show up and we take somebody into custody, all we can do is call Detroit and have them come and pick them up and take over, take custody of that person. If for some reason Detroit tells us we don't have the staff to send or we're not sending anybody, we're gonna have to let them go because we don't have jurisdiction in that alley. So I just want everybody to know that. That's why I want to meet with the precinct staff so we can maybe come up with some resolutions to this. I don't know what they might be, but let's at least sit down and talk about it.
I appreciate you doing
All
that.
right, so Beaconsfield Fire. Deputy Director Bostock is going to give the council a packet of information, and basically what it is the same thing that I'm going to be showing to the community here. So very quickly, this was the home on Beaconsfield. As you can see, it's not a small fire by any stretch of the imagination. I'm sure that a lot of you, when you look at the public safety budget, and I've heard some comments tonight about public safety being the largest budget. I'm sure some of you might have taken a deep breath when you saw my training budget. This is why we train. This is why we have to train. You know, I saw pictures in the Grosse Pointe News. Firefighters are up on that roof. They have to know when they can go up on a roof that's on fire and when they can't. So it was really important that we do have our training budget. I'm going to lower these so you guys can see. Hopefully we can still see those. I want to go through a quick timeline of our response. It should be the top paper there on your packet. The first 911 call came in, reported a house on fire, heavy smoke coming from the upstairs. That was at 12:13 p.m. First yellow car on the scene. Supervisor called for a second alarm, which actually was a third alarm. Automatic aid had already kicked in from the city. That first car on scene was at 12:15, 2 minutes after the 911 call. 12:16, engine 1 arrived on scene, 3 minutes after the 911 call was received. Third alarm went out at 12:17. 12:20, heavy smoke from the roof. All the people were out of the house, and you'll find out why in a few minutes. 12:21, engine 22, Grosse Pointe City on scene. First interior attack team enters the house to make their way to the second floor bedroom to find it fully engulfed in flame. Excuse me. So I think it's commendable, to say the least, that from the time of the 911 call to the time that we're in the house putting water on a fire, 8 minutes. I don't think you get any better response than that. The 12:23, the Grosse Pointe Farms engine is en route. 12:30, the roof begins to collapse. The interior attack teams have to exit. The roof self-ventilates. Fresh air does nothing but feed the fire. 12:35, the interior teams are safely outside. The decision's made to change to a defensive mode to protect the exposure, meaning the houses on either side. Houses on Beaconsfield are roughly 10 feet apart. Large streams of water are applied by the tower, which is ours, and engine 22, which is the city, and they were behind the house in the alley. 13:35, smoke begins to lighten and the interior crews are sent back inside. They extinguish the flame and then overhaul begins. They check for extension through the walls, other hot spots, and this involves the task of pulling the ceiling down, interior walls, and then rolling back the roof. At 17:05, which is 5 in the afternoon, last unit clears the scene. So we were on scene for almost 5 hours. It was really important to note that Detroit Fire Department had 13 personnel on scene. Battalion Chief Dave Brown responded with Engine 58, Squad 6, and Ladder 31. And I want to read their names because I think it's important to mention them. Engine 58's crew was Lieutenant Eric Fedd, Fire Engine Operator Alan Lingman, Sergeant Brian Balch, and Senior Firefighter Justin Thayer. Ladder 31 crew was Captain Feng Q, Firefighter Tony Stallworth, firefighter William Flowers, firefighter Amari Dabney. And then squad 4 crew consisted of Captain Anthony Angelucci, firefighter Ryan Och, firefighter William Lavon, and firefighter Richard Lowry. And it's those kinds of cooperative events and cooperation that really, I think, goes a long way at making positive outcomes. And there were a couple positive outcomes in this, and I'll talk about one of them in a minute, but one of them was that we lost no other structures and nobody was hurt. No civilians were hurt and no firefighters were hurt. That is a plus on a very bad situation. So the next diagram that you'll have in there is just a diagram of Beaconsfield, and I want to explain this. You'll understand the glows in just a minute.
Your neighbor.
So it's important to understand when you have 100-year-old infrastructure, going down Kirchable, the big blue line represents a 16-inch water main. Coming off of that is a 6-inch water main, which goes to the first fire hydrant, which was mid-block on Beaconsfield. That's the fire hydrant that Grosse Pointe Park tied into. We had no problem with water pressure or flow from that hydrant. Grosse Pointe Farms tried to attach a hose to this this fire hydrant fed by the same 6-inch line, and there was not enough pressure. You'll see why I'm not. They had to reroute and go to the next street over, and then also stretch a line down to Kirchable to get the pressure we needed. So why is that? So this is a 6-inch water main. 6-inch water main that we are attaching a 5-inch hose to. So you can see that this is going to take a lot of the volume out of this. But the problem is, it'd be one thing if we actually had a clean 6-inch line like this. The problem is with 100-year-old infrastructure, it looks more like this. So that was part of the problem. And once the officers rerouted the fire hoses down to the proper or different fire hydrants, they got the water and the flow that they needed to run the pumps. The delay, I think, was estimated at about 3 minutes to relocate some of those lines. If you can tell by the pictures of that fire, 3 minutes wasn't going to make any difference because that fire had been burning for a really long time in that attic. Coming into the 21st century, talking to the water department, nowadays this is what they're recommending is an 8-inch water main. So you can see the difference in what we had and what we need. Is there any questions on that besides the handle?
So the fire main the main that they tapped into was also a 6-inch main.
Correct.
But located elsewhere.
Correct.
And then that was.
Coming off the
that-
16-inch.
Right. But the one that they tapped into was a 6-inch. It was just located elsewhere. And the reason you didn't have enough flow was because of what's kind of poked in there, that crud that's kind of in there. Or it's not because you were already tapping into a fire hydrant that was already utilizing. Was it because it was a shared main with 2 holes and everything
Yes.
crowded in there?
So you have arguably what's supposed to be this, and this is the size of hose that we're draining off of that. This is a 5-inch hose that is standard for all fire hydrant hookups. This is what goes into the pumper. Pumper generates the pressure, and that's what throws it out.
You have some device that actually, obviously,
Yeah, there's a couple.
There's something in there that,
Yeah.
right, that allows that pressure to go all the way through.
Yes.
But if those pipes were cleaned and opened, would you have had that same issue because you're using 2 fire hydrants along the same main?
I mean, I'm going to leave a lot of infrastructure questions probably to Mr. Seisel or the water department, but I can tell you that 100 years ago when they first put these water lines in, they didn't anticipate the type of demand that we require nowadays. The engines back then weren't pumping it. We can generate 21 gallons a second. You need a really good water flow to do that. And that's what caused the problem. You took a 6-inch and probably made it a 4-inch. And then we're draining off 5-inch.
We're already doing a lot of work in infrastructure and cleaning pipes and this, so are we looking at this as part of our infrastructure or is it separate?
So this is, and I'm glad the chief and I discussed this because the visual, and especially we're going to have for the coming months, more of these visuals and, not only from a public safety standpoint, but obviously everything else infrastructure. When we're talking about floods and we're talking about sewers and mains, water mains is that other critical need that we have. We did apply for that drinking water revolving fund from the state. We keep applying every year. Our ranking, unfortunately, is quite low. They're looking under, there's a term out there, disadvantaged communities. So ones that, have a harder budget being able to handle. And so in our case, not only from a public safety standpoint, but just a modernizing of our water mains, this is something that you're seeing all communities have this challenge right now, dealing with 100-year-old infrastructure, their public safeties, police, fire departments, of being able to handle with what we have right now. But as we look to, as a community, discuss further, how are we going to pay for and look to improve upon, those discussions will be had. And so to answer your question, I took it long, but yes, we are looking into the not only on the sewer side, but water main is just important, not only for clean water, but also for our public safety officer and just, looking to improve. And, it's pretty impressive to say 100 years ago that water main is still working today. And that's where, we have very talented water department within Public Works that when a main break happens, they take that piece right there and then they attach it to that plastic piece and they have coupling. And so when they're actually down on the ground, that's what they're using to attach to that main. And it works for now. But as we look to, do pipe bursting or, just abandon an old main, run 8-inch water main and including to what's called looping. So right now on a lot of our residential streets, the water main will end at the very end of the street. So in the case now of modernizing and what they're doing, especially like in, let's say Oakland, Macomb, St. Clair communities that are developing and new, they loop them. So there's redundancy efforts so that, in our case, we had to run, going to different streets to be able to get pressure where you could have multiple trucks on a single street be able to pump like this because you have that flow continuously going through the community.
I understand.
Yeah.
But I guess just so that I'm clear,
Yeah, no problem.
the OHM work that is being done, if I understand you correctly, they are looking at these water main pipes already. Or this is something that you're potentially going to do in the future.
So we did. Okay. Yeah. So when we applied for the drinking water revolving fund, we had a plan that was set in place of, these would be the things we'd address, which would be the water main, the looping. We also had meters, lead service lines that we addressed in that plan that shows, the amount of main we would be doing, where they'd be located and such. So we already have that already done. The next steps will be, and I addressed it with Councilmember Rayland, is also looking at taking that main, taking sewers and other aspects and putting that into a capital improvement plan so that in the future, a residential street could look and say, hey, I'm getting my water main done. I'm also going to get my sewer done, in next year and such. So those plans are already in place, but.
Is public safety aware of where those potential issues are so that if there is a fire, they know don't go tapping into these two? We have identified this as a clogged or.
I don't think there's no flaws in
identify that
water.
to be able to save those 3 minutes, because 3 minutes can mean a life, right?
But there's no clogs in any of the water main or any issue. If there is, then
I'm saying that loosely, sorry, just
Right,
looking
yeah,
at. not
yeah.
making
So
it
that
hard, but-
what, and actually, I'll have Patrick Droz address what the material is in the old infrastructure. But for Patrick, why don't you the inside of the water main right now? What do you call all that material in there? It's just built up over the years and.
Call it tuberculation.
Yeah.
It's really just mineral deposits, time, cast iron.
Okay.
It's commonly, there are processes that communities can use to kind of flush that out. But ultimately, she Chief's point, a 6 inch is still a 6 inch. So ultimately getting to that larger size and additional looping provides that additional redundancy.
I guess, I mean, comment to what you're
It's a tactic, potentially a
But what I
tactical
think-
approach.
But I think what we have to understand is our staff is fully trained on the fact that we don't have looping and we do only have 6 lines, and that you understand that you can't tap into the same hydrant.
Correct.
They do this training, I'm assuming, and I've talked to you about this even after. So we understand how to deal with our system.
Correct.
And I also want to clear, there are no broken known fire hydrant mains right now, correct?
No.
Okay.
I think that was the most important thing to clear up, so the
Yes.
community
Yes.
understands there was no deficiency in the performance of the staff team or the equipment. Every concern is related to massive costs in upgrading 100-year-old infrastructure.
Correct.
Produced as it is, would have been expected to, being 100 years old, partly polluted, and tapping into it with a 5-inch line. Performed as we kind of expected. And speaking of the training, one of the problems is if you keep trying to draw water out of a hydrant that's not delivering the pressure, you can cavitate or collapse the water mains. Now you have a real problem. So they do know the training on that.
All right, I do know we need to move on. Councilmember Wiener.
If I was just gonna reiterate, just to unpack it, OHM is scoping sewers, not water mains. So the work that Patrick is talking about, it's the water coming off of our systems. That said, the water mains and the lead line replacement is the 2 biggest prongs of what we're dealing with in infrastructure is the water main replacement plan. And we're not talking about onesie twosie stuff, but this is a huge capital project that's been in the works even before this council took office, and we're pushing that forward. It's one of the reasons why City Manager Seisler mentioned that in July, we expect to have some financing options that we've been working on. So anyway.
I think there's some young people that we need.
Yes, they do. And could you just quickly update the community on our fireworks requirements?
So
I did get an inquiry on that.
it's the day before, the day of, and the day after.
Okay.
It's by state law. And so, I mean, if somebody's outside of those, citizens have the perfect right to call and we'll go out and take a look at it. And under no circumstances, they fire them off on public property. So they can't be in the middle of the street shooting them off.
Right.
But if they're on their own property, day before, day of, I'm talking about 4th of July, the day after, please don't call us.
And don't start a fire.
Yeah.
Please.
No fires, no, please.
And courteous and neighborliness would be great.
Yes.
So, all right, I just wanted to make sure we get that. Now,
So
yes,
about
we
the,
have.
just finishing up on the fire, I said there's always a couple positive things that happened. One was that nobody was lost, but no, the big thing was nobody was hurt or injured in this, probably because of the actions of Leo Carter. So Leo had been at Defer Elementary on the Thursday before the fire, where we had taken all of our apparatus out, and he got a little bit of a lesson on how to be fire safe. So on Saturday morning, it's a 2-family flat located on Beaconsfield, and they're related. Their 2 families are related, and everybody was downstairs watching a movie. But Leo heard something a little strange, and he went to investigate a crackling noise. And he went back upstairs because the fire started in the attic. He saw some smoke coming down the attic steps, went back downstairs and said, "Mom, the house is on fire. Let's get out of here." And so he's the one who found the fire and helped get everybody out of that. And so, Leo, because of what you did, we're going to make you an honorary firefighter. And after we're done here, we're gonna take you down and get you on a fire and get some pictures. But in the interim, Mayor Hodges has something that she would like to read.
Yes, Leo, first of all, did the community even know there was a young man in here? He's been so well behaved. Amazing, so Mom, you must be proud on so many levels, but Leo, you're 6, and you know what you did? You saved 6 lives. That's pretty amazing, and we're here tonight celebrating you rather than at a funeral home. And not only did you save 6 lives, but you're pretty special 6 Lives. I did a little looking at your grandpa and I saw he flips pancakes at St. Clair, right? He does wonderful things. And you guys have been here a long time, so we're really grateful to you for all that you did. And in honor of you, we would like to read this resolution. Are you ready? So, council members, whereas Leo Carden is a kindergarten student at Defer Elementary School in the city of Grosse Pointe Park and is 6 years of age. And whereas Leo lives in the 1200 block of Beaconsfield Street with his family, which by the way, do you want to bring the rest of your family up? Would that be kind of nice to have them standing with you? Yeah. Come on up.
Except the little ones.
Especially your little brother, right? Come on, guys. You had to be part of it too, right? You all need to hustle and get moving. We're so glad to see you all. So Leo lives in the 1200 block of Beaconsfield Street with his family, and whereas on Saturday, June 4th, 2022, a fire started in the attic of the family home while all occupants were on the first floor of the home. And whereas everyone was unaware of the fire as it continued to grow in strength and size, and whereas Leo bravely and calmly went to investigate strange crackling noises by going upstairs where he observed a large amount of smoke coming down the steps from the attic. And whereas Leo went back to the first floor, alerted his family that there was a fire upstairs and to call 911 and get out of the house. Now therefore be it resolved for Leo's quick and decisive actions that we declare Leo Carden an honorary firefighter for the city of Grosse Pointe Park on this 13th day of June, 2022. Resolution declared adopted, assuming you all agree that this motion is in order, and we will be therefore honoring Mr. Carden. So. I was doing a little looking on some significance of the number 6, and I learned that it's the smallest perfect number if you're a mathematician. And I think Leo's perfect. I don't know about you all, but
I agree.
yeah. Well, and I too would like to thank the community because we are a family, right? And I know Jennifer Woodman in particular really rallied for you all, and you have all of our full support as well. And I know there's a GoFundMe campaign out there too that I encourage everybody to join. And I would like to also point out that our Department of Public Works Director even made a significant donation to that. So I'm just so proud of our family and our team. And I know we've got a motion by Councilmember Rella, and I believe the second came from Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield. So unless there's any discussion, I would ask that our clerk please call the roll.
Councilmember Brenner?
Can I just say one thing?
Oh, sure.
Yes.
I have to say thank you. The firefighters were phenomenal. It was so absolutely unbelievable how everything was handled that day, and the fact that nobody was hurt. Our community, Jennifer, we were all sitting on our front lawn watching our house burn down. But she put something on one of the social media sites for donations and kid sizes. Within 2 hours, her lawn was full of donations. It's a phenomenal community. Our firefighters were absolutely exceptional, all our public safety. We've lived here since 1981, and
We're family.
my dad was born and raised in that house, so we're trying to rebuild and come back to Grosse Pointe Park.
Good.
Thank you.
A giver, so that's why you got it. So thank you very much for that.
Jan, you want to call the roll?
Councilmember Brenner?
Yes.
Gallagher?
Yes.
Caulfield?
Yes.
Wiener?
Yes.
Mellon?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
And Mayor Hodges?
Yes.
Resolution passed.
Hey, Leo, we're also gonna drop out some candy, because I think that's the most important.
And answer any questions that concludes my report.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Chief. And to the entire law enforcement team, you guys made us proud yet again. Okay, now we can start making up some time and move into unfinished business, and we have our OHM sewer update. Thank you, Mr. Droves, for sticking with us tonight.
Mayor Hodges and Council.
Clear a little bit here.
That was so
So included in your packet is our update for June 2022. Some of the highlight items just to go over. Probably most significant update for us is that Pipe Tech has effectively completed the first system and has been to every corner of the city in terms of pipeline inspection. We are now proposing and actually directed Pipe Tech late last week to move into kind of some of the secondary areas. There were some areas that we wanted to do more heavy cleaning within. So they're currently working in those areas, starting actually today. And that's over the southwestern portion of the city, basically south of Jefferson. As of right now, we are about, as the report says, about 75% through the attempted sewers. The 25% refers to some of the larger diameters of the lower trunk sewer, which we had some challenges getting into there. We have gotten into certain segments enough to know that the pipe is in good condition, which is really the main question we're trying to answer. So we feel comfortable at this point that we can refocus some of the unused contract dollars in the areas that we know additional cleaning is needed to help identify those manholes in some of the yard areas. The manhole inspections have also resumed. Just for the council's memory, the substantial completion of that contract is July of this year. So they are on track to hit that level of completion. The other items that we are going to be advancing here in the next few weeks are the diversion chamber inspections. We commented in probably the April meeting update that those particular locations were critical for us developing a refined hydraulic model. So we worked with Pipe Tech and getting into those, and they're going to be doing those within the next week or two. Another update, we've kind of keeping track of the St. Claremont Falco project, which is going to move a fairly significant amount of impervious area from the system. We did receive plans late last week for that, so they are on track to get that completed this summer. We'll provide updates as we become available on that. An update on ERV. A couple items in the packet for your information. We have been reaching out to get real construction quotes in terms of how much cost from a materials perspective the project will cost. And so we've included those just for context in there. These are, again, are basically material costs, so cost to purchase and deliver to the city. And we've also included lead time on some of those items. As we know, with supply chain pull away, it's an issue, and the construction industry is not immune from that. So probably the most significant one that we found out is actually the sluice gate and then the backflow prevention valves are both in the 20 to 24 week period in terms of lead time for that. Geotechnical investigations were completed. For the completion of the deep sewer, one of the things we wanted to make sure we had completed before we went out to bid was what are the conditions below grade, because that will greatly affect the bid prices we get. So that was completed. In terms of completion, the downspout disconnection inspections were completed for any property owner that was interested in having those done. Again, we've inspected via DPW about 300 homes throughout the city. There is a graphical representation about where those are located. I think it's the 7th page of the report. So you'll see the 5 areas that we targeted, work through those methodically. The different colors that you see there demonstrate the green ones are the ones that are found to be completely disconnected. Yellow is partially disconnected, and then the reds are ones that were completely connected still. So obviously the yellows and reds are the ones we want to be focusing on. I believe the next step after this is that letters will be sent to those that obviously not have the inspection completed. Just a reminder that the requirement to be separated now. And again, that's if it's feasible. We know that there are many homes that have a downspout that might be right next to the driveway. We don't want to create icing concerns, but generally those are, maybe 25 to maybe less percentage of the actual total downspouts that you get at home. So if we're all doing our part to get at least 3 out of those 4 disconnected, it's going to have significant impacts to reduce the amount of flow in the system. Model update. Probably the biggest item is that we completed what we call our hydrologic model, which is allows us to simulate for any given rain event what would the signal in terms of how much flow gets into our system. Using 3 years of data prior, as well as the modeling data, the flow metering data we've been acquiring over the last 7 months has allowed us to dial that in. So that will be shared with people for their concurrence. Just an update on flow metering. We thought we were going to have a rather significant storm last Monday, and it turned out to actually be a little shy of an inch of rain. So it's not as significant as we would have thought. So I just kind of give that for context. We've still not seen an event that it resulted in a spillover to the lower trunk sewer. We're really trying to get that type of storm because it allows us to really calibrate the model about when that sewer starts to fill up. So in the next few months, I'd imagine we'll have an event that does that. But up until this point, in terms of the flow meter we've had, we get so with that, I'll pause, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Councilmember Wiener, do you have anything to add to that in your
No.
capacity as chair?
No, we covered it well. I mean, it's good that the storm last week wasn't bad, but I'll admit I was walking the streets in the evening, kind of hoping to stress the system a little bit more to see how things are coming together. I mean, the good news is everything behaved as expected. Pumping stations, everything ran well. Except we're still kind of waiting to see something stress it, but right now, knock on wood, things seem to be behaving the way they should be. So we'll keep optimizing. That's kind of our goal. So.
Is there anything residents, there could be a storm event this evening, actually, correct? Is there anything that you can suggest to ease residents' concerns or actions that they can take this evening to mitigate any impacts?
The single biggest things are, again, we're still collecting information. So if residents see an issue, if there's a street, something behaving like it shouldn't, let us know so we can kind of track it. Otherwise, the expectation that I get this one a lot is, for example, if catch basins are blocked off, we want them cleared out. Obviously, if the water isn't able to flow, we want that to happen. The confusion on catch basins being cleared out was in a catastrophically huge storm where there was all kinds of water. There was some back and forth last year talking about, well, maybe you don't want them cleared, so it kind of acts as a reservoir in the street, but that's a catastrophic event. No, clear the catch basins if you see them. Otherwise, just let us know if there's an issue. And again, with the sewer separations, I know the numbers are actually more separated than what's on that chart. I know some of them haven't been logged in yet. Keep communicating to the city, and I can't stress enough, don't be afraid of contacting DPW about it. Again, this is not punitive. This is, we want to improve the system. I've said it before, my home, built in 1932, unfortunately, there's some aspects that can't be disconnected. I put a ton of work into it. I've disconnected as much. DPW will give you advice. They will give you feedback. Again, one less pipe connected is one less pipe connected. So anything we can do to improve it, we'll give you feedback. We'll give you support on that. That just dramatically helps because, again, when you're talking about thousands of homes, that extra volume takes stress off the system. So.
Other questions for?
Yeah, I don't want to belabor it. Thank you. I ask this question all the time, and I see that you are going back into the areas that were unable to be cameraed. Does that cleaning you had mentioned include the camera and visuals, finding out where the missing manholes or mysterious ones are?
Yeah. So if we go back to September of last year,
right?
We started it and we said we want to get through as much of the system as we can as fast as we can. So if there were streets where the crew was basically sitting there for hours trying to get through, we said, we'll come back. And so now we're at that point. And so what our goal on these segments here is that we're just going to basically, the contractor's going to work until they get through it. They're going to jet it out, clean it out. And then when we do that, we'll be able to start finding those manholes. So the best thing about that is, of course, we're removing sediments from the system.
Right.
We're also setting ourselves up for better maintenance in the future, just because we'll be able to access these more regularly. And so, the goal for this is money well spent. To really kind of focus in these areas that we know have been a challenge in the past.
If you have a deck project and you uncover manhole at DPW, no, please.
Well, that's the other thing to articulate too. When you see on the map areas that they could cover, that doesn't mean that there was a blockage in the pipe. It just means that, for example, manholes are access points.
Yeah.
Because over time, I mean, it's crazy, we've been finding all kinds of stuff. So again, it doesn't necessarily mean there's an issue with the line there, it just means that we can't actually get into it to see.
No, that's why I belabor, because that area was very heavily hit.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of needs cleaning, needs sewer, and needs camera. I just want to make sure, and I know it is your focus. So that's why I'm going to continue to be a pain and ask that question. My only last comment, it's more so for city administration.
Yeah.
And I think Max brought up a good point as far as the downspouts, that it is not punitive, but I want to make sure that we are going to have mandatory inspections on every single home, and I want it to be clearly stated that. Yeah, and this was part of our effort too, that, you know, when we entered into this program, OHM Systems, this was voluntary, that we were asking residents to please work with DPW so that we could come out, you know, set up a program to investigate. Probably in September, October of last year, we updated our downspout ordinance to, again, refine some areas that there were exceptions and then make those, you know, a little, you know, more that we just had to update with the times. And so being with that said, now, you know, we're going to move into a phase that, you know, when our DPW is out inspecting, you know, those homes that did not sign up and that there is, you know, a seen problem, you know, they'll get notified by the city that there's so much to correct or they'll let us know within days, because that's crucial in this whole, you know, if we all are in this together, you know, it's going to help us out. And so I was thankful for those residents that did apply. Obviously, you know, not everyone can get to it, but, you know, we're going to take that aggressive approach now of going to them and sending out these letters.
And those folks that are going to be doing those mandatory inspections will be aware of the ordinances that we have in place that so they are clear when it is allowed and when it is not.
Correct, yes. So that not only our public works, but also our building staff, when they're out,
Yes.
you know, looking at any inspections or that, just go take a quick look around the house real quick, mark it, let us know. So we got a twofold approach. So
Again, it's not a punitive thing, it's
No.
not trying to pressure,
we need to.
Community effort.
And I'd strongly suggest, again, for example, the best bet is to contact Tom Jennings, DPW. Members of council, feel free to email me and I'll forward that on. So again, you know the history of your home too. It's a lot better if you contact the city and that causes kind of a connection so that they come out. For example, a neighbor of mine, an old house, the way it all pitches, you know, it's not obvious until the owner goes through and explains it, and that'll give you some kind of latitude with it as well. Again, we're trying to be proactive and work with residents on this. Again, we're not going to do anything unreasonable. We're not going to put an undue financial burden on you. We're most certainly not going to put any health and safety risk on it. But again, anything we can disinfect helps the system. So, yeah.
I'd also like to point out that State Representative Joe Tate has joined us. He's been very generous with his time this evening, and he and I also took some time within the last month or so to talk about how we optimize our ability to secure support and other solutions. So thank you very much for that, Representative Tate. You're more than welcome to say a few words either now, or if you want to talk about other items, we can do that during the public comment portion. So just to prepare you, if you want some time, please feel free to take it. And then I should also we're close to the 1-year anniversary, right, of this catastrophic event. I hope it's very clear to the community that we're your friends and neighbors. We experienced it as well, right? We've been ardently working towards the short-term solutions that allow us to optimize our existing system, as well as putting the planks in place for those longer-term solutions that will really help us permanently resolve the issue. So thank you to the team. We've just had fabulous leadership, Nick, your team, and Pat Thomas and Tom Jenny and Mike Kraus, and certainly our Councilmember Wiener and his talents couldn't be more timely than they are now. And Pat, you and your team have just been fabulous. And then we've got to thank our residents as well, right? Especially those that are disconnecting their downspouts and showing you where their manholes are, right? So appreciate the community's support of this process too. So we've come a long way in a year, and we've got a lot of work to do. And again, I hope this community sees how focused we are on those results and on the need to solve that problem. So with that, if there are no other comments or. All right, okay. All right, thank you very much, Pat. Moving on to the master plan adoption. City Manager Seisland, would you like to get us off the ground on this item?
Yeah, so let me gather, and then also Mr. Howard also will address a couple things just to start off this process too, but just to give a preface, pursuant to the Michigan Planning Enabling Act, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on June 1st and approved on June 6th the city master plan. The master plan is being passed to the city council as the body that will adopt the plan. MKSK is here tonight, Brad Strader and Anne Marie Kirby, so they'll be happy to answer any questions or concerns from city council. And attached here too is a resolution reflecting the adoption, as well as the resolution that was adopted by the planning commission. And so, before I go over to Jake, one thing I want the city council and the community to know is thank you for all your efforts and your comments, as part of this master plan and this process. It's been, something of a community engagement piece that we've been in multiple spots. We had surveys, we had in-person, we also had to deal with COVID. And, as time evolves, our priorities change and our actions that we had to do. The storm certainly was one that, we focused some of our efforts in that, as we look into this plan and the action plan, that, these are guidelines that we can look to and see, is this a priority that we need to do now? Is this something we need to revise and looking for that? And in addition to, what we look at that our community spoke of and that we can address right now? Obviously, infrastructure being one, parking is a big thing. Looking at updating parks and such, so these are the elements that are in the plan. And I know I could go on and you guys will. So that, Jake.
Yeah, Nick asked me to just speak a little bit. And I've had some questions from some council members as well on sort of what a master plan is and what it isn't from a legal perspective. I think it's important to keep in mind that a master plan is a guide. It is not an ordinance. It is not a law. It does not create its own independent requirements. It's not actionable as an independent document. In other words, you can't run afoul of the law by not performing under the master plan. The master plan, as I see it, really has one principal critical element from the position of city attorney, and that's where it deals with zoning. Because generally speaking, courts give great deference to city councils and how they zone and control and exercise the police power over the property in the community. If they're doing that in accordance with a master plan, the court is going to give that great deference. If the master plan is calling for a zoning plan and zoning decisions are made that are inconsistent with that, those decisions are not invalidated, but it weakens the presumption that a court would give it. So hopefully that lends some context to what I'm talking about, which is in essence, and if you look at our own zoning, the Grosse Pointe Park zoning ordinance, it reiterates the point that the master plan is to be used as a future guide and has no other further force and effect. And so what that really means, again, is this is meant to provide guidance to the city council, to the community as we look to develop the community. It's a 20-year plan, right, with 5-year intervals that it gets reexamined. And so it's not, when you're looking at it as a document, again, it's not a list of priorities where boxes are checked, there's timelines. And again, if there's any kind of penalty for not adhering to the master plan, that said, there's no point in passing a master plan that nobody's going to follow. But it is a guide and not a law or an ordinance or some other official requirement that is required to be met. It's really meant to be a guide for 20 years of development with the recognition that in 20 years, lots of things can change. And that's why the master plan is not the end all be all for that process. So hopefully that answers some questions. I know people in the community have had some questions. I know city council members have had some questions. And Nick asked me to speak on that point. So if there are any additional questions about that, I'm happy to answer them. But Nick did want me to make that point.
Thank you. Before going into discussion, it might be best if we get a motion on the table and then go into discussion. Councilmember Rowland,
Motion to approve the resolution and adopt the city master plan.
is there a second?
Third.
Seconded by Councilmember Brenner. Now is there discussion? I just would ask my colleagues to keep your comments clear and concise so we can keep the meeting moving along. But does anybody have anything they would like to get on the table?
Before I ask a question, is there, during this discussion, can we ask MKSK their input and clarity on some of this? If there were questions, or is it just a discussion between us? She's here, right?
Yeah, I would imagine, you
Okay,
can
yeah.
ask her.
So we could address
Right,
that.
and yeah.
I just want to make sure. Okay. I mean, that was a question I had for the group. I know you were.
I don't know, I have some, but I don't know if Mr. or anybody else.
No, I just wanted to find out before I get into my stuff.
Okay. May I?
Councilmember,
Of course you can. Thank you. So I prepared something and I'm gonna kind of read through this. And then I also do have some questions and some other notes that I might wanna go through. So as I read through this master plan document, there are many good facts about our community and the process taken to establish this document. For example, the master plan review process started in 2019 for this document and it has taken 3 years to complete. Yet this final draft was submitted to council less than 1 week ago for expectation for approval. The cost to produce this document is $50,000. And as the document states, it is to be used as a guide for existing assets and future land uses, confirming it is not a binding document or the holy grail to-do list. It further states the master plan update will provide strategies necessary to preserve the quality characteristics of our community. And it goes further to say it will provide realistic and strategic recommendations and action plans to achieve the vision of the city of Grosse Pointe Park. The study couches its credibility and its recommendation and its authority in community engagement. Our community has 11,595 residents. There were 5 options to engage the community. They had a visioning option, an interactive website, an open house, a survey, and a prioritization survey. The participants who participated from our residents in total of all of those actions, of all of those opportunities, if we assume that every single one of them was unique and no one participated more than one time, we would have had less than 10% of our population engaged in participating in what they wanted to see for our master plan. As a result, it is, in my opinion, left to this board to decide whether or not to accept what has been written in this document that 10%, less than 10% of our community has engaged in. For example, the survey that was submitted, 1,000 people participated. That's about 0.08% of our population. They prioritized in that survey 5 things that were important. Parks and Rec at 51%. That's 500 participants said they'd like to see improvements in our Parks and Rec. They prioritized sidewalk maintenance at 45%. I prioritized stormwater management, underground infrastructure, and early childcare at 38%. Yet, I don't see this represented clearly in here as a function of those priorities. This survey of 1,000 people was the one that was mostly participated. And those priorities of those mostly participating were, as I read, the other opportunities for the community to engage was the visioning, which 150 people participated in. That's less than 1% of the total population. Those folks prioritize sidewalk maintenance and some improvement to bike paths at 74%. About 100 people said they'd like to see some improvements to bike paths. The interactive website had 116 unique people responding. That's less than 1%. The open house had 100 people participating. That's less than 1%. And they prioritized some improvements to bike lanes. That's about 50 people at 50%. They wanted crosswalks improved, business parking, redevelopment of vacant properties. We also sent out a prioritization survey. 120 people participated in this. This is less than 1% of the population. Of that 120 people that participated in that prioritization survey, 73% prioritized above everything else the future of the state. Yet it's not addressed here. So I think they've done a great job and there's a lot of good work here. I would like to see more time to review this, given that it was 3 years in the making, $50,000 cost, and only 3 days for this council to review for approval. The other things
And I find it interesting that in none of this priority do we see bike paths as a priority, yet in this document, we see 8 pages of recommendations for bike paths. We talk a lot about in this community about green spaces and how important they are. And one of the priorities that's written here is to take a 12-foot path, which is the size of Kirchable driving lane, and put it down the green space of Windmill Point Drive. So I'm not sure this is representative fully of our community and what they're looking for. I know Mrs. Bold made a comment about it not representing the drafts. I must admit, I have not looked at those drafts. But I would like to spend, and to your point, our city attorney has mentioned that the most important part is zoning. And yet this document has not been presented specifically to the zoning committee for review, which I think would be a natural process for approval for something as it could potentially impact zoning or what we need to do for zoning. So I think as an elected official who represents this community, it is important that we make sure that what's in this document is representative of what our community really would like to see. And as such, I would request that we have some more time to review this, more than 3 days after 3 years being spent on this document. That's my comment.
Other comments?
Yeah.
Yes, Councilmember Wiener?
So first and foremost, in preparation for all this, I actually reviewed the former master plan proposal that was put together by the former planning commission. And I do want to say, I think they do deserve some recognition, especially Chairman Goodwin. I really did like the plan that they put forward, but the decision with the previous council was to commission a third party to put together a master plan. Now, I've been engaged in this process. I've been following along the planning commission, all of the meetings, including the council session for us to voice our opinions on it. I've tried to use the research of other communities and their representative and respective master plans. I've voiced my opinion on this kind of throughout the process. I'm sorry to say that I do think that a lot of what was brought to us was fairly boilerplate. It seems like it was kind of generic. This is what's put forward to a lot of different communities. There was attempts at community engagement. And again, we have to be realistic how much community engagement you're going to get. You're not going to get 100% of the residents engaging. That said, and I've made this request that all the community feedback, the surveys get included with the master plan. So it's on the record because frankly, direct response from the residents, their priorities are higher priority to me than some of the recommendations that we've seen kind of put forward in front of other communities. I've always said that, priorities change as well. With the event that we had last June, it completely, rejiggered everything that we were looking at as a city, and that's going to happen, and that's naturally going to happen. And whether there's a master plan in place, if a necessity arises, we are going to be dynamic. We're going to adjust to it. And frankly, like I said, bike lanes, we talk about that a lot. My priorities are going to be the sewer, regardless of the recommendations that I'm going to follow. Same thing with ordinances, with zoning. There are zoning recommendations here. I believe strongly, and I've tried to voice this, this is a built-up community. The idea that we're going to drastically rezone things, I'm going to stand kind of against that if that does happen. However, where we are now, we have been without a master plan for years. We need to remind everybody that a master plan needs to be in place. At some point, it is encumbering our ability to function. It's actually restricting our ability to get money, grant money, specifically with infrastructure. Again, I think what City Attorney Howlett spoke to, that this is a guideline. We have the ability to take recommendations, but work around and adjust accordingly. At some point, we need to get this master plan in place, and I don't see how a delay is really going to fundamentally change what we've got. We've all voiced our concerns. We've had engagement with the council. Again, at some point we need to move on with this. And I mean, we're going to be having more master plan, or rather more planning commission meetings in the future. There's going to be feedback from council. My inclination is to vote for this today, voicing and putting to the record my concerns with it that, again, we're already putting forward, especially with the previous meetings. But at some point we got to move forward because it is going to encumber our ability to function.
Thank you,
I would agree. I mean, there's a couple of comments I have too. I mean, I do believe that we just heard it tonight from our public safety. here to time from our parks. All of these things in here that are recommendations that are, a lot of them are high priorities, are things of adding new. We can't even take care of our own. We need to improve our own before, in my opinion, we move forward with any of this, like adding bike lanes and new walkways and new sidewalks down a green walk. That's my question to you, is where did these come from and why and how did they get allocated to be a high priority? Because if I look at the data set, and it's more to educate myself and maybe members of this community, is it says really clearly on your, existing conditions and the community engagement. I mean, number one was this was even before parks and recreation opportunities, sidewalk repairs and maintenance, underground infrastructure, stormwater management. 1, 2, 3, 4, top priorities. Not once did it mention bike lanes. Not once did they bring up, a walkway in the middle of a median. I guess that's where I need help understanding is how did those get into high priority situations? If you would mind addressing.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kimberly Kirby, project manager of the master plan update. I'm happy to address your questions about how those got into. So we had set up about 15 different items in the survey that people could choose from, and they could also fill in the blanks. So the items that you're talking about were already items that we had written out as potential options. And then we kind of showed, summarize what those top 5 options were as part of the summary of the engagement part of the document. At, infrastructure and right, so we're looking at sustainability, land use, zoning, and as a factor as well. All of those need to be integrated into the master plan. So yes, the bike lanes were named as top priority, so were infrastructure items too. So there's multiple items that are high priority, considered high priority in the master plan. We had a that came out also for prioritizing those actions. We wanted to give the community a chance to look at all of those recommendations and then factor in their responses along with Planning Commission reviewing those surveys. And Planning Commission broke out into a few different working groups. Yep. And then they had those priorities. And then they had their working session in April, I believe. And based on the comments that came from that meeting, as well as public comments too during that meeting, that then factored into the changes that we made to the draft from October. Okay. So that factored in the public's opinions and then Planning Commission's recommendations as well. So it's a combination of those two melding together. It's not just the community, it's a combination of City Council, Planning Commission, and the public, and then also just best practices. There's a lot of different factors at play. Obviously, community engagement did play a huge role in the recommendations you see before you, but there's technical analysis involved as well. So just want
I appreciate that.
I had a couple other things. Brad Streeter from KSK. So this is not like a survey doesn't drive the master plan. It's just one of the many ingredients. Right. Because the public and the survey doesn't get into the details, even if you interact with people at the workshop. But the public, when they respond to surveys like infrastructure, they don't understand the difference between the 6-inch and the 8-inch and the crud. And there's a lot of details that go into the master plan. And the priorities of sidewalk maintenance and infrastructure and parks. Resounding number one, the daycare isn't really part of the master plan process. You can adjust zoning to accommodate daycare and so forth, but that's not really the purview of the master plan. So some things that the public said they wanted to see are outside the purview of the master plan. So we tried to focus on the priorities. Infrastructure is resounding number one. The MEDC had criteria of what needs to be in the master plan, and they were one of the funders. So the $50,000 city was funded by the state, and they have requirements of what needs.
They're master.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, we're working on multiple.
That's okay. I think that's enduring.
You can make that happen.
Sorry. The key thing is the infrastructure elements, but that's in the capital improvements plan. So that was one of the things that the MEDC requires is a capital improvements plan. So that one of the reasons it's in there is for the capital improvements plan to get eligibility for the MEDC funds in the future. but we don't get into all the details of all the things that were just talked about in the previous agenda item, because the master plan just looks 20 years in the future. It says that's the priority. So the idea of the master plan is these are the priorities. It looks at technical data, it looks at funding opportunities, it looks at input from planning commission and city council and administration, it looks at opportunities like Mac Avenue and others to work with adjacent communities. So all those go into it. So it's not just the popularity of a one-time input, and 1,000 people is a really high number for a master plan. So they have 10%, which you say is low, that's very high for 10% in master plan, when people in the city are generally happy, so they don't show up for people, they typically show up for people.
And it was also very COVID too.
And I'm glad you asked that, because that was one of my follow-up questions, was what is the average response? I mean, I don't know.
It's probably like 6 to 8%. It's kind of it's a high, probably the highest than 20% when they do statistically significant surveys in a growing community where people are really concerned about growth and a lot of problems. And so you tend to get up around 20% is kind of the high.
So of that high number that we had a response, they specifically prioritized those 5 that I mentioned, the 5 that it's written right in here, yet those priorities of the highest amount of that you've had this response is not
because the cost.
representative in here.
Bike lane is very low cost. Infrastructure changes are very high cost. So you can do all the bike lanes for the cost of probably a couple blocks of infrastructure. So that's why you also look at the cost. So the timing.
But it's not a priority.
I can't ride my bike.
But it's not a priority of our community, is the point.
That we did have a section, that sustainability section does talk about all of the infrastructure, and there's also an investment section too of the action plan. We do have those in there.
Oh, yeah, no, it's very well
High
done.
priorities in there. I do want to also point out too that you can revisit the master plan. We actually highly encourage it every year. We encourage planning commission, city council to revisit the master plan on an annual basis to review your accomplishments for the year, and then also are there things that need to change priority wise? Do you need to add anything? Because things do change, new challenges might arise, so you might need to take another turn and say we need to put this on the table and remove a few of these items or do these in 5 years. So that
I think it's a checklist. I think the attorney said very well. It's a guide. You can pull up the list every year and say, what are the opportunities? We know new things come up each year and say, well, this didn't really come up 2 years ago in the master plan. This is a key item. It pushes up, it shows forward, and you don't have to amend the master plan. You can say that's a guide, and you can do an annual checklist. What are we going to do in 2023? What are we going to do in 2024? And you'll get more information from Whitechem or others and putting it into capital improvements plan. So the idea is just to get what did the public want to see? What did we see from looking at it? MEDC's guidelines, planning commission's guidelines, looking at the goals of the city. What are some general goals for the next 20 years, and then readjust it every year. So
I appreciate that, because like I said, my questions are geared to challenge in a way. I think this is good. It's more of an educational aspect. And I think also for our public who's listening to tonight and viewing, needs to understand this too. And I'm glad Jake made the comment he did, that this is not a checklist of we're going to do. It's just higher suggestions of what we should be doing or looking at or thinking.
It's meant to be a visionary guide.
right, and all these questions are good. And the gentleman that asked a comment about residential or the garages. So the idea that when Evans did the architectural guidelines or standards, and they just say generally in these neighborhoods, you want the garages to be in the rear yard. It doesn't say, it's not changing zoning. Right. So that house is still conforming to the zoning ordinance, and the zoning hasn't changed. If you change the zoning, then that could change its ability to, so this is just a guideline. Ideally, we would have all the garages in the rear. We should look at that, look at the zoning ordinance and say, how do we want to promote this now and so forth. So there's a lot of steps. The city attorney said this. Master plan says these are potential things to move forward on, and then there's other steps in the process before you enact where the infrastructure goes. Are you going to change the zoning, rezoning properties? There's some guidelines in there, but that's as opportunities arise in the future. You could say, what does the master plan say? But the master plan doesn't direct where the rezoning is going to happen.
Well, and I'm glad to hear you say that. That was part of my question behind that, is to make sure that, God forbid, right now our focus is on infrastructure. We've heard it tonight. not only that, but our parks and our amenities. And that was my initial response was, whoa, why all of this before that? So. I'm glad to hear
And
that.
that's a fair, is there anybody who hasn't spoken yet, who wants to? Councilmember McMillan, Brenner?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick.
Yes.
Yeah, so we all got the email from Chairperson Lindsay today explaining that some of the facts are inaccurate. This isn't a 3-year document. We started in 2020. We had a brand new planning commission rollover, the chair left and all that. So we do have new people in. I think it's been about 17-month process. With COVID in mind, that's pretty good. Most of the time it takes 1 year. Other cities locally are engaging in this well. I think you guys are helping some other local cities. Or other cities are using you for a master plan.
Huntington Woods is.
And then I think Grosse Pointe City jumping in with another group as
I
well.
know that they're starting, McKenna's.
Yeah, McKenna's doing there. So this is something that everyone is gonna be doing. We have never done it. We've been relying on our planning commission to do it, so it's very out of date. The last one was in Microsoft Word, or what was it? Word Perfect, I think it was the document. We couldn't even edit it. So it tells you how far back we've gone without editing this. I trust Chairperson Lindsay. I know Mayor Hodges is on the planning commission as well. She supported the passing on this to us, and I know Nick, city manager, has worked really hard on this.
Resident engagement was at all-time high. We've never had 10% resident engagement on anything we've done.
Sometimes we don't have any engagement, we pass things. So I think 10% is pretty good. I'd like to see more. Councilmember Gallagher, I agree with you. We'd love to have more. This is a living, breathing document. So every year we are going to review it. Planning Commission is committed to that. That makes it great. Like we're all concerned about infrastructure and parks and rec. We can rearrange these and it's not set in stone. It doesn't mean we're getting bike lanes tomorrow. Everything still has to come through us as a body, which I have confidence that we can guide that in. So
I'm in support of this as well. And it's something we need to do to get grant missions. So, and I don't know, when's our deadline to have it?
There's no specific. There's no specific deadline.
Okay, I thought we had an adopted master plan by a certain date.
Not that I'm.
Yeah, not that I recall.
Well, it's except we're
Every
out of
5
compliance.
years.
We're out of compliance. You're supposed to
Okay.
review.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're supposed to go through the process every 5 years. You can go through it more often than that if you choose.
5 or 7.
And so we're a little bit overdue on our 5-year, but there's not a law date certain that we have to approve it. We're already a little past that review process.
Thank you, that's all.
So, I do see you, but I wanted to give the others an opportunity to talk first, unless you have something. Okay, Councilmember
I
McMillan.
just think that once you have something in writing, I mean, it should be a goal and it should be something that you want to do and have it be attainable. And some of the things in here I don't agree with. So you could say, well, the council changes and all of a sudden now it's in writing. And I just think we don't need to have some of those things in here. I'm not in favor of everything that's in here, and it's hard for me just to pass it the way it is. And to Councilmember Gallagher's point, we spent a lot of money, a lot of time, and we want to have the product be right, not just pass something and say, well, we don't really have to do everything in here if we don't want to. Well, what kind of plan is that? So I recommend that we table it for another month to look through it. Now, the question would be, let's just say there's 5 things that we come back here and change and recommend to the planning commission. They needs to go back to them.
Correct. If the two, you guys can't amend it. What the city council can do is reject it. If they reject it, they have to send written comments about what those objections are. And it goes back to planning commission. They go back to the public comment, public hearing phase. So you kind of go back to the middle. It has to then go back through and then come back to the city council eventually. So we can't, not we, you guys, the city council cannot amend it. You can reject it with your objections and then it's up to the planning commission to implement.
Which requires re-advertising as well and circulating to the various tax and jurisdictions.
You have to go, I'd have to look and see if you have to go all the way back to that notification phase. But
Are you saying that we can't take the time to review this further
No.
for 30 days?
What I said is you can't amend it. You can take as much, what I said
Could
before.
say, we want more time to review it, and that doesn't send it back anywhere else.
There's nothing that
I
prohibits
would
it.
ask the question to Councilmember Wiener's point, what is it specifically that we're holding up for 30 days that we can't do by reviewing this further?
So the city's not compliant, we don't have an active master plan. And their summer period there are a lot of grants and it's a whole menu of things that not having a master plan in place. Let me take a step back and put it this way. Unintended consequences and trade-offs. Anytime I sign anything, that is my first priority. What am I signing? What can happen from this? Full disclosure, City Manager Seisland's not the only city manager that I know or deal with. So I have tried to do a bunch of research on this. Again, and I appreciate all the work that the Planning Commission's done. Don't agree with everything, but they did they worked very hard. They brought something forward to us. My initial reservations were pretty strong. I didn't want to hamstring myself, especially, again, I'm focused on infrastructure. I did not want to put a document in there that was going to tie my hands or obstruct my ability to get things done. Frankly, the conclusion I've come to at this point right now, not having a master plan in place is a bigger obstacle right now than the things that I'm not thrilled about within this master plan. Furthermore, let's game theory it out. So we table it. I don't know, it's not just going to be 30 days and then we have something else. MKSK's contract is up, so they're out of the picture now because all due respect, there's no way I'm allocating more money to MKSK to work on the master plan at this point. Zero. So that said,
Yes.
no, it's got to come from us. City Council has to allocate funds for this.
No.
The planning committee, yes, the planning commission can.
Do the work that we would recommend any changes, they most certainly.
If they want to, yes, but that's, again,
And specifically, my question to you, Max, was what is holding up? If we wait 30 days, what specifically is the issue?
this
Is
can
there
cost us
grant
grant
money
money.
that we don't get?
This can potentially cost us grant money. And again,
But we,
if I saw,
we don't.
I was trying to answer you, a moment ago. Again, if I saw something that, if we sat on it for a month and it came back to us drastically different, I don't see that happening. I think that we fiddle around the edges here and nothing's going to come from it. And it'll be back here in 2-3 months and we just waste the time. So
Maybe this may clear it up. So what you're saying, Jake, and I want to, is the expectations of this. So as it is right now, our job is either to approve or send it back to planning commission with our comments.
Written objections, yes.
They would then have to amend it, go to public hearing. So this isn't just in 30 days, we want this changed, and they change it, they come back to us.
No,
It's a full-on process.
they've already approved the master plan that's in front of you.
Okay.
And so the next step in the process by your resolution, the city council's resolution, was the final approval of the master plan. So your options are either to approve or reject.
Or review further.
Well,
You could review further, but you'll be reviewing the same document, but nothing in
Is
the
it?
document.
And I'm saying
But
we've
this
had it
is-
for 3 days, right?
Totally understand, but
But this was my follow-up. But once we adopt this, we can have a look back and review at any time for updates, additives and changes, correct?
correct.
And we can vote against anything we don't like. I mean, we have the ultimate say in all of these things. If we don't want a pathway down the median on Windmill Point, which I would agree sounds, I would think a lot of convincing, I have no idea what the point of it is, then we just don't vote for it, were it to come before us. I mean, this is an aspirational document. Nothing here is written in stone. It is,
And
these are good things to look into for the community going forward.
And I guess that's my point, is we can make, once it's adopted, we can make changes over.
And I think
Every year, every 6
A
months.
planning commission.
It's the same process you described to make those changes. Whether we adopt it now or we make the changes later, the process is still the same. They must go through the planning commission as Jake has just described.
So again, I mean, we're all going to have an opinion on this, but the bottom line is, and the suggestion too, that we've only had 3 days to look at this isn't true. I mean, again, this has been a process going on for a year. I've been at every one of these meetings, watching every one of them. We had a council engagement where 3 of us attended where we put our suggestions in. And again, if it was as simple as I'm going to cross out a couple things and then return it, that's not the case. If we choose to deny tonight, we deny the master plan entirely, we kick it back to them. Planning commission's going to have their meetings. They're going to figure out what they're going to do. And again, their opinions clearly aren't the same as mine. So it's not like me denying it today is going to all of a sudden get me an exact document that I want. Then they're going to reapply it. And we're going to have, again, only a few days by that same standard, we're only going to have a few days to review it again. I just see that denying it today, it is an imperfect document, but denying it today, I think just drags out the process. And I don't really see the overall benefit that it's going to give us. I think we're more effective putting the master plan in place and then communicating to planning commission and amending or working with it. And again, as we've said before, if there are largely disagreeable things within this master plan, like again, I'm not letting bike lanes supersede infrastructure work. I'm not going to, based off zoning recommendations, completely go into rezoning. Again, this is how we want to move forward with it. But I think frankly, we've been without in a perfect world, I think I would have loved to have seen the original master plan in 2019 get adopted, but it wasn't. This is where we are. And I didn't commission MCASK, but this is what I've got in front of me now. And I think, again, it's taking energy away from other work that we can be doing.
So just a couple comments, something that we've addressed, and I know Mr. Rothy tonight after city council approved his administrative officer role, is that every single year, the planning commission will review these action items and can add to of, different action items that maybe there's something new we haven't thought of. I thought of your question, Councilmember Gallagher, that was good. And it made me think about what is there out right now that if, of a master plan. So the Semcog planning grant that we just applied for, that would give us more points, like just from a green infrastructure standpoint of having the master plan because of the discussion with greenery. Also, I just thought of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities initiative. So when these, groups are looking at, okay, so we can have engineering reports, we can have studies that were done and such, but also having in the master plan showing that Grosse Pointe Park has listed something as a high priority. I'm just using those examples. That gives us more points, when we're applying for them.
Have you applied for these already?
Yeah,
So it didn't stall you in any way?
I still applied, absolutely, because I want to try and as much as possible get every dollar, but
So
it might be able to.
you would have to then just amend and get a couple of points for.
So I would
They
give
spent
them,
30 days.
give them an addendum,
30 days.
give them the,
Yeah.
so.
You can do that in 30 days' time as well. You're not
Right.
expecting to have a response within 30 days.
Right.
I think that it's important to give this the due respect for the entire council to review in more detail. I do see in here that there is an error I think it is, or maybe it's a typo, I don't know. You have on the future land map on page 65, you have identified institutional areas. That is also then those institutional areas being identified. St. Clair, looks like Pierce, Deferred, Tremblay, City Hall. When you go to the zoning plan recommendations on page 105, those are all highlighted as civic and park districts, with the exception of Tremblay. That did not make it through, and should be represented within that space.
We're finding, city manager Sison did point that out to me today, so we can mention that, and it'll just be considered a correction.
I was gonna ask, some of the corrections on the maps, because there are some minor ones, like the parks at the end of the street is zoned.
Yeah, any kind of like corrections.
Okay.
Just those can be made, that's not.
Those are not amendments. Amendments are
Okay, and I have a question. As to specifically why were the most trafficked streets recommended for bike paths?
Are you talking about Churchville,
Mag, and Jefferson?
Typically, when we're looking at doing bike lanes, you do look at the volumes of traffic and say, does it warrant doing a bike lane, and is it still going to be safe? So we do look to see if there's too much volume of traffic, then it wouldn't be necessarily safe to implement a bike lane. But in this case, those do fall within the threshold of adding a bike lane to the price list. So those.
So you're.
And those, I will say too, during the community open house and surveys, those three corridors were pointed out by participants as people wanting bike lanes in those locations.
I think that putting bike lanes in those my personal opinion, in those most traffic areas, I know as I'm driving down Jefferson and I'm going downtown to Detroit, and I have made that trip many, many times. When we hit the border, I remember how traffic flowed, and it was so nice and easy to drive down Jefferson through Detroit to get to downtown. Now they have all the bike lanes, which is great. I hardly ever see anyone using them, and traffic is a nightmare now to get down to Detroit through there. Now it's great. Some people can, and quite frankly, I think it looks like an eyesore with all that green and all those things sticking up. This is not something I would like to see driving down Jefferson for us, driving down Mack Avenue, or even Churchville. I think that there are other alternative ways to create bike lanes using, maybe using Charlevoix and maybe Verner or even St. Paul,
making maybe one of those one way and one of them another way and putting a bike path in there, but putting pedestrians and suggesting and having them go on those really busy thoroughfares is not.
If I could just say.
Go ahead.
I was gonna try to bring it home. Well, and I just wanted to add that, having been at the table as part of this, I really saw this document evolve in a positive way. Is it perfect? No, and everybody at this table is gonna have a different definition of perfect, right? But some of the things that I saw the document mature into was, one, infrastructure was elevated in significance and performance and importance from what it was in the original draft. 2020 data was inputted, Trombley was given more prominence. The marina was bumped up in importance. Our relationships with our border communities were identified as significant opportunities and important endeavors to pursue. The fact that we have land under our ownership and the need to look at that inventory and see how we can leverage it were all things that really the document matured into. And I think that's a testimony to the fact that MKSK was listening and the Planning Commission was on top of it. And really would like to thank our chair, Michelle Lindsay, and the team, as well as Malik Goodwin and the previous Planning Commission as well, because it's all a process that is fit together. So should bike lanes be the same priority as infrastructure? No, but that's not, we need to understand that what makes a community competitive is understanding different modes of mobility, making sure that we have them implemented so we can compete going forward. So yes, bike lanes are important, but they're not as important. And so, that would be, that's an imperfection that I think needs to be corrected. But there's a certain practical reality. We've been at this for a very long time, and as much as we want it to be perfect, it's not going to be perfect. So, and the other reality is we don't have the power to change the master plan. We have the power to send it back to the Planning Commission. And there's no guarantee that once it goes back to the Planning Commission, we won't end up in the very same place that we are right now. So, and that comes at a cost of time, a cost of money, and the potential of pulling us out of consideration for various grant sources. And I personally believe that the wise and pragmatic thing to do is to press ahead and rely on our zoning ordinance, our capital improvement plan, and our budget processes to serve as those check and balances that give us the comfort level to address some of the shortcomings that we're seeing. And then we also have the annual review process as a check and balance. And then we did ask Ms. Delmish to be very thorough in her minute taking for tonight to actually approach them, from a bullet points that all of this feedback is documented in those minutes, so that if there's ever a question going forward about what the intent of this body was, it's very clearly stated in those minutes. And that is another management tool that I see as being available to us. So I personally will be voting in favor of this master planning process. And if the question has been called, we will take. Okay.
Just real quick, as far as the data set, is that going to be included in the appendix? Like the responses and all that?
Yes, those, and they've already been included, and I did send this along.
So that'll be in the appendix of the master plan?
Yes.
Okay, good, because all right, that's. step forward.
And it's on the, it's project website.
And I know I appreciate it, and I know there were some questions about zoning. This, if you don't mind, I would like to read 3 sentences in our current zoning. Is that about the master plan? It says the term master plan shall mean the comprehensive community plan, including graphic and written proposals indicating the general location for streets, parks, schools, public buildings, and all physical development of the municipality. Includes any unit of part of such plan and any amendment of such plan as parts thereof. I think what's important to note, this is a current zoning. Such plan may be adopted by the Planning Commission, as a future planning document, but otherwise has no further force or effect. That's in our zoning right now. So if there is clearing about that, that's why I pulled that up.
How long can I ignore the call to question?
There is also a request for changing the charter within that plan. I don't know if anybody caught that or not, but there is a request.
All right, clerk, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Brenner,
Yes.
Gallagher,
Yes.
Caulfield,
Yes.
Wiener,
Yes.
Rutland,
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes.
and Mayor Hodges.
Yes. Thank you. I think that was excellent dialogue. That kind of healthy tension that is representative of good decision making. So we're there. Thank you very much. Okay, well, I didn't read the resolution.
That's
It's
okay.
technical, but it was in the packet, so.
I did a quick look. You do not have to read. It's been our tradition usually to read the resolutions. And certainly reading a resolution to make a 6-year-old and a firefighter is appropriate to read. You do not have to read the technical.
So to make it clear what we did vote on, however, the motion that was approved was a resolution approving and adopting the city master plan as carried. So thank you.
That resolution will be included in the master plan.
Correct. All right. I may have lost my agenda in this mess.
Council comment.
Thank you. So that takes us to council comment. Thank you very much. Is there anybody who would like to be heard? Thank you, Brad and Emery. I really
Thank you, guys.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Safe travels home. Yes,
I
Councilmember
just want to make
McMillan.
it perfectly clear. I know that our city attorney mentioned it too, and it's been mentioned by other council people, that this action plan, that this master plan is not a to-do list. It's a wish list. And I think the public needs to know that because as things evolve, our number one focus is infrastructure, and we need to keep these things on the table. So we say, well, this is a good time to do this, or take them off the table through the planning commission. I think that's something that we need to stress, that this is simply a wish list. And it can evolve. So that someone doesn't come back later and say, wait a second, it was a high priority, and here it is. We could just say, we moved it down to a low priority, or we're taking it off the table.
And to that point, it's a wish list of 10% of the population in our community, and it is mostly representative of the planning commission and the input from MKS and what they would like to see in our community as their experience. All right, I'm going to ask that we discuss new items just because it's 9:30. So are there other things you'd like to comment on, Councilwoman Gallagher? No. Anybody else have comments? Okay, moving on to new business, the lead service line recommendation. City Manager Seisland.
Yes, so I do have Mr. Droz with us, and so I'll start off a little bit before Patrick joins that. We wanted to get an understanding of cost of doing business with lead service lines, and so you'll see an initial number between 630 to 748,000. What we're asking for tonight is an approval of $100,000 because certainly we want to be able to fit within state statute that requires lead line replacement. But we also have other needs in our community that we need to be addressing right now, the water mains, the sewers and such. And so as we are developing our capital improvement plan and also hoping that those federal and state dollars come down to us, those will be some other tools that we can use for applying for funding. So that being said, Patrick, take it away.
I'll be very brief, but as was mentioned a couple times already, there's a lot of infrastructure needs in the community. Lead service lines are part of that, especially when we get to the point of replacing water main. That said, it's going to be, when it becomes time to do that, it's a particular item of work that can be a little bit invasive because we're literally going inside of homes to change out lead service lines, upgrade meters, that type of thing. So before we get to the point of doing very large projects, a project like this is valuable for us to develop best practices about what works best in the city of Grosse Pointe Park. The good news is I did speak with the contractor last week. Certainly when we take a bid from 600,000 to 100,000, you do get some questions about whether they're going to be okay with that. They are. In fact, they're actually a little light on work, believe it or not. This is a contractor that does a lot of this, but they've had some unfortunate luck with other communities pulling back. So they're very much eager to get in the community to do the work. They're qualified, we call around. So I think it's kind of a win-win for us to be able to do this at a reduced budget and still get a feel for what works in the community. Maybe some things we might want to clean up before we get into the larger project. So as part of that, there will be continual involvement from city staff and monitoring how things are going. And customer service is a big part of that to make sure the work is performed. Putting back, we're going inside home to make sure we're restoring things to satisfaction to the property owners.
Motion to approve?
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
gosh, who was the second? McMillan, give it to you. Okay, so motion by Councilmember Weiner, seconded by Councilmember McMillan to award the 2022 water services renewal contract to All Seasons Underground for selected categories at $100,000. Is there any discussion?
But,
Yes.
Councilman.
This is budgeted.
It's water sewer.
It's in the water sewer.
Part of it, it's part of it.
It's in there.
Yes.
It's already been budgeted. No other questions for me. Councilmember Weiner?
I was just gonna briefly say, this is something funded mandate, but that said, we can pull it back a little bit with equipment, with raw materials being so expensive. And the best thing about this is it actually gives us more intuitive information as practice to do this. So it actually potentially can save us money as we plan out the larger scale work that we're gonna be doing. Again, to reiterate, this is on the city website. The city water is in good shape, drinking water is good. This is just a unfunded mandate from the state of Michigan. And our water quality is great, but this is something that we do.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
My other comment is just please open big communication with everybody who's getting repaired, going to get repaired. It's, no one likes surprises.
In fact, we've actually already had communication, legislation to everybody that be in the project area. We'll be filing that in the next step.
I'm not gonna surprise anyone drilling in a wall.
No, well,
Right.
you know, the grass gets torn up, the driveway gets impacted. I mean, we've got to be completely in front of us.
All right.
Yes.
Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Brenner.
Yes.
Dillinger. Caulfield.
Yes.
Weiner.
Yes.
Rutland.
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
And Mayor Hodges.
Yes. Motion carries. We now have a lead service line contractor on. Thank you very much, Mr. Jones.
Thank you.
Next time, we have to make sure your agenda items are one after the other, so you can skedaddle. Lawn cutting proposal, city manager Seisel.
Yes, so council, before you tonight, I do have a proposal for lawn cutting services, which would enter into for the rest of this year, which would be 19 weeks left of lawn services. So GPP Park and Rec currently maintain lawn cutting services of the parks and Windmill Point Islands. And this has been done historically, for Grosse Pointe Park. Currently, we have 3 full-time employees, 1 part-time that takes roughly 24 hours per each employee per week to maintain these services. In a proactive effort, and it came up tonight really, is to efficiently utilize our maintenance staff to other areas of the park that have been deferred maintenance over the years. I would highly recommend to save on their time so we can reallocate them to other areas for painting and just other deferred maintenance that and through the work of the Department of Public Works, who is now actually oversight of Parks and Rec maintenance staff, that this will improve efficiency as well for the Parks and Rec maintenance. I highly recommend that City Council approve this consideration. We did get 3 quotes. I'll start with the highest first, was Toco Menino Landscaping. They're based, they do a lot of work in Grosse Pointe City. Backer Landscaping, who does a lot of work in the park at the other points. And Green Meadows Landscaping that, contacted on to the other Grosse Pointes. They currently work with Grosse Pointe Farms right now over near Pier Park. They're very happy with their services. They're based out of Rochester Hills, but they've never had an issue coming to Pier Park. There's been, no concerns from residents or the farm staff. And they come in typically and they get it done. And, in Pier Park, for example, a day where ours might take, a day and a half or so, or depending on how many contractors are coming in. So it's going to include lawn mowing, trimming, blowing of hard services, and edging on a bi-weekly basis. So what we would be entering into is 19 weeks for the rest of the year, which is about $28,500. So financially, what does that impact to us right now? We do have room left in our budget this fiscal year, which we got about 2 weeks left.
Yes.
Till July 1, yes. And then we also have, after July 1, that next budget, we budgeted for, parks, recreation, those departments have budgeted items that we can actually use some of that money and allocate where improving efficiency when it comes to, do we need to hire, this extra maintenance staff member, where now that we have, contracted out, we can utilize our full-time staff, to supplant that. So I would recommend to the city council, I think it's greatly going to improve our park system to approve this quote.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by McMillan, second by Vader to approve the quote awarding Green Meadows Landscaping Services for Windmill Point and Patterson Park maintenance. Is there any discussion?
Yipper. So 24 hours, just because I'm looking at this financial impact, is not savings, by the way. I hope everybody knows that. Because the only way you're gonna save is if you eliminate those 3 jobs, which we're not. So it's gonna be a neutral. Right? Has it always taken us 24 hours? My question is this a new thing because we can't find people, or is this a management oversight problem that is created? Has it always been 24 hours for 3 employees and more? 4. Oh, I'm sorry.
I think it's 4.
4 employees?
Yeah, 1 part-time, and then my understanding is yes, because not only do you have the, Windmill Point and Patterson Park, you also have the islands too over at Windmill that they're doing. I believe it's Middlesex as well, that they're also addressing those islands. So, Park and Rec staff then are having to move their equipment from both parks, trailering that around. And so I believe historically that number has always been the last, when I say always, the last several years since I've been city manager, that it's been.
And you're saying there's money in the budget. I think you and I talked about this a little bit, but there's different allocations. And I'm just looking at this as a $28,000 ad, which we don't have. Sorry.
Right.
And that's my question is, you've exhausted all options. It's better for staff not to do this.
Absolutely.
But city manager, you are saying it's cost neutral because of some shifting around.
Yeah, it's
not
reallocating
gonna
of some
affect the
budget
bottom line.
resources that we have right now in this budget, this current fiscal year, and looking into for the next fiscal year, July 1. So it's just, again, switching around a couple of those resources and such.
It's also equipment, gas.
Yeah, Councilmember Raylan's right. Also, gas prices right now, equipment.
That's
It's a
minor, but it adds to it.
But
Yeah, it's a neutral.
here's my point.
Yeah.
It's
You're right.
$1,500 a week this year. What's it gonna be next year? And now I don't have equipment. I haven't maintained my equipment. And now could it be cheaper for me to go back to having our staff mow it? I don't know.
Right. And at least we have the stuff, the lawnmowers right now, for that availability. And we do have our mechanic that's able to fix it and, keep it up. Because we still want to have some lawn mowing just in case if we need it done on an emergency basis.
And we're gonna keep doing the islands. That's not
correct. Yes, Park and Rec will still do the islands. However, we're freeing them up from Patterson proper and Windmill proper.
Any other, just,
It's just kind of, I said when I was running for office, a lot of these answers I feel are strong in our residents. Why we're not hiring college kids that are home paying $15 to $18 to mow. That's where I get at. And that's why I ask, is this a oversight or is this just the easy way to sub it out? So to speak, and I'll just use and generalize for the terms of all the gross points. Right now, we are second to last because Grosse Pointe Woods actually has a mix of contractors and their DPW staff that contract for their lawn cutting. Otherwise, the city, the farms, and the shores do contract out those services. Not to say just because they do means we should, but it's right now with the labor market of where maybe in the past we could have gotten, several of those college kids coming in and that. Maybe something we'll try and kind of looked at for next year. Maybe we can look to that as we're planning.
any other discussion?
Yeah, I want to say thanks to Tom for always having that financial fiduciary mindset.
Sorry, yeah, do it.
So just to, no, it's good. We need it. 24 times 4 is 96 times 15 is 1440. So that's close to that 1,500 if we're paying $15 an hour. So it's close to what you're looking for.
But we still have grants, is what Tom's point is. It's not like we eliminated those.
No, but if we're behind on everything else.
Overtime.
Councilmember
But
Quinlan?
it gives us a good chance to take a look at it this year. Have these guys concentrate on the parks, fix up the little things and tweak the things that need to be fixed up. And next year, make a decision. Which way do you want to go? Did it work for you or not?
Councilmember Brenner?
And next year, we will be able to address, right now, yes, we're not saving any money because we have these people on staff and they're getting their hours. But looking forward next year, then if this works, we can say, okay, then we don't need so much staff. And so it can ultimately realize some savings, correct?
Right, Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Brenner,
Yes.
Gallagher,
Yes.
Caulfield,
Yes.
Weiner,
Yes.
Relland,
Yes.
McMillan,
Yes.
and Mayor Hodges.
Yes, motion approved, bringing on Green Meadows Landscaping Services for maintenance at Windmill Point and Patterson Park. Next item, escrow fee policy.
One already.
So we're ahead.
Good evening, ladies and Mayor Hodges and members of the city council. I will say this is my longest meeting in my career, so this is uncharted territory. So if I begin to slur my words, please don't let me fall over. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. Thank you for your appointment of me on the planning commission as the administrative officer. Look forward to working with that body and yourself implementing a master plan. For you this evening, the item I brought for your attention concerns an escrow fee policy. Currently, there are several applications with the city, all involving the planning commission or in the zoning board of appeals case, this body, with site plan review, special land use, as well as variance requests for the zoning ordinance. As part of that application, there is a fee that we charge to the applicant. And again, that covers internal staff time, publication costs in the newspaper. Plus, oftentimes with larger projects, we need to bring on more technical reviews from, in our recently McKenna Planning Services we've used, as well as OHM's services. So we incur additional costs beyond what that base fee is intended to cover. And historically, all those costs are the responsibility of the applicant. But what we do is we typically wait until after the project's approved or rejected before we go and seek payments for those fees. That can be just administratively inefficient. So there's a lot of language here in this policy. It doesn't increase costs. It doesn't shift costs from one to the other, but merely it requires that upon making an application, an escrow account is established with the city. The policy as written proposes $500 minimum. That's so again, I'm going to pay my base fee. I'm going to put forth an escrow as city administration needs the services of legal, engineering, planning, or other things. The policy is kind of open-ended to anticipate for different situations that those costs then are deducted from that initial escrow balance. And again, it's really just a way to administratively make our bill collection and cost recovery simpler. It's something that I used a lot in St. Clair. Definitely when I got there, similar situation is we actually had a developer who wasn't paying any of their bills. So again, that's not the situation we have here. But again, it avoids unpleasant situations like that and just makes, just in my few months here, I've seen a lot of staff time being spent on, okay, what do we have outstanding still? What do we have to collect? Whereas here, it's got the money in the escrow account. We'll deduct it, and any unspent funds are returned to the applicant. So that's the high level view, the nuts and bolts of the policy. Be happy to answer other questions that you see.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by Weiner, seconded by Brenner. Is there any discussion? The motion is to adopt the escrow fee policy and resolution as presented. We will not read it into the record because it is multi-paged and highly technical, but it is available for review. And with that, I would ask that the clerk please call the roll.
Councilmember Brenner.
Yes.
Gallagher.
Yes.
Caulfield.
Yes.
Weiner.
Yes.
Relland.
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
And Mayor Hodges.
Yes, motion carries. We now have an escrow fee policy. Thank you, Mr. Roque, for your leadership on that. I don't know, maybe the city manager will excuse you so you can get home before the witching hour, right?
Don't do it.
Moving on to our almost last item of new business, which is a resolution for an acknowledgement of the history of Juneteenth. Today is an opportunity, I think, to grow as a community. And we have an opportunity to take a step, I think, that allows us to really move forward. I know my experience in the community has always been that by recognizing our past, by acknowledging it, and by doing so with sincerity and with care, we heal as a community. And when we heal, we grow and we get stronger and we flourish. And that's how we move forward. So and that's how we thrive, and that's how we achieve the vibrancy I think that we all want. So I would really like to thank the city manager for putting the time into crafting this resolution that is before you. And with that, I believe this is one that does merit reading into the record so that you know precisely what you are considering this evening for passage. So with that, tonight you have before you a resolution acknowledging the history of Juneteenth that reads as follows. Whereas United States Army Major General Gordon Granger landed at the port city of Galveston, Texas in June 1865, following the surrender of Confederate General Robert E. Lee to Union General Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia on April 9, 1865. Whereas Major General Granger announced on June 19, 1865, General Order Number 3 that reads in part, the people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. Whereas the June 19, 1865 General Order Number 3 was preceded on January 1, 1863, by President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, decreeing persons held as slaves in designated states, among them Texas, to be henceforward free. Whereas following General Granger's General Order Number 3, June 19th, Juneteenth, became recognized by enslaved persons and their descendants as the date of final emancipation. Whereas since then, as the oldest known celebration commemorating the end of institutional slavery in America, the celebration of Juneteenth has persisted into the 21st century and has come to honor the strength, endurance, and dignity of the African Americans subjected to the atrocity of American slavery, to celebrate the unknowable joy of their liberation, and to highlight the centuries-long and incomplete struggle to redeem the American creed of equality for all. Whereas slavery was abolished through the passage of the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution in 1865 after the end of the Civil War. Whereas on Thursday, June 17th, 2021, legislation was enacted declaring Juneteenth a national holiday. And whereas the historical legacy of Juneteenth shows the value of continuing to fight for a free, inclusive, and humane society. And now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of Grosse Pointe Park commemorates June 19th, 2022 as Juneteenth Independence Day and recognizes the devastating legacy of American slavery and encourages all residents to educate each other further and generations and future generations on the history of slavery in order to ensure this tragedy be forgotten or repeated, and to celebrate African American history and culture while continuing to promote a strong sense of community in Grosse Pointe Park. That, council members, I have before you for your consideration and would invite a motion.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Caulfield, seconded by Rellin. Is there any discussion? Okay, the motion before us again is to approve the resolution acknowledging the history of Juneteenth. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Renner.
Yes.
Gallagher.
Yes.
Caulfield.
Yes.
Keener.
Yes.
Rellin.
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
And Mayor Hodges.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Congratulations to our community for showing that leadership. Last item on new business is council comment. Are there any of my colleagues who would like to be heard? Yes, Councilmember Rellin?
I'd just like to say happy Pride to everyone. It is Pride Month. Motor City had a really amazing Pride event yesterday. Over 40,000 people participated. We as well have GP Pride coming up Saturday, July 18th. I know the community engagement team has been helping with that. There's also another walk on Saturday. Maybe Mayor Hodges can elaborate on that a little bit. The walk, run, and roll for palliative care at CS Mott Hospital. And it's very near and dear to my family, as our niece is a patient there. So I encourage people to walk with that. I also would like to make a statement. I'd like to note the resignation of Bob Plaza from the Recreation Committee after his unsolicited rant to a resident at Patterson Park, in which he attacked the character of the only minority member of this body by making false statements and stating that I'm not from here and I'm not one of us. It was clear he could no longer serve for this diverse community. We have no place for that kind of coded language designed to paint minorities as others. Residents who seek to serve should understand that they must be open-minded and put aside preconceived notions about who belongs here.
It's also time to abandon the "we know what's best for you" mindset of prior administrations. As a community and a society, we're always trying to move past that attitude. I, for one, am looking forward to new leadership and fresh ideas on the Recreation Commission. It's time. In fact, it's not a good idea for any appointees to serve for 30 years, much less 20 years. Such practices eliminate a whole generation of potential candidates and tend to foster stagnation, which is never good for any institution. And we are now paying the price with so many important facets of our parks being in disarray. Earlier this month, a courageous Grosse Pointe Park resident posted her facts around this racist commentary on the GPP community Facebook page. She also sent the following email to all of us on council. I'm going to read this with her permission and remove portions of her personal info and also for brevity. Quote, hello, GPP City Council and City Manager. My name is Laura. I live in GPP with my husband and 4 kids. Today, my 4 kids, my father, who is also a GPP resident, and I were finishing up golf lessons at Patterson Park when a man came up to us and said, you know, there's a councilman trying to rip out these golf greens to put in basketball hoops. The noise disturbance, riffraff, drinking, and violence that will come from basketball courts will be bad for Patterson Park. His name is Vikas Reelan. He's not one of us. I paused and said, what do you mean not one of us? He clarified, he's not from here. You know, he's not one of us. I was shocked. I was standing there with my 4 mixed race children as this old white man was making racist remarks about an elected city councilman. He then went on to tell me who his name was, Robert Plaza, and that he is the chair of the Parks and Rec Commission in GPP. I was appalled, a blatantly racist human on a GPP commission. Something has to be done about it. He made racist comments about one of our elected city councilmen, also in public and also in front of children. What does he say behind closed doors? I hope that the rest of the City Council, Parks and Rec Board does not share his same views and would feel just as infuriated as I do. Please let me know what else I can do to address this and help make way for people who are not one of us to step into leadership roles and lead this community with integrity. Thank you, Laura. Now I'll continue with my thoughts. It is worth noting that Laura was accompanied at the same time of Bob Plaza's racist, unsolicited comments by her father, an older white gentleman, as well as her children. At no point has anyone disputed the facts of her account. Subsequently, Mayor Hodges contacted Laura. She offered an apology and said that Robert Plaza has left the Rec Commission. Online, it's indeed true. He's removed from the website from the role he held for 30 years. At no point has anyone in the administration reached out in any way to discuss this matter with me. Mayor Hodges mentioned it to me briefly before our community engagement meeting last week with no chance for a meaningful discussion. We should be good since he stepped down, is about all that you've said. I was the object of this incident but was not involved in it. I was the target and ultimately the main victim of these lies and racial thoughts. It's a shame. To be clear, I am big on basketball. I've advocated for the construction of basketball courts in several locations in our parks, voicing the requests of many residents. I play regularly with over 20 residents that I know want an outdoor court. I'm not ashamed of that. There have been a few horribly written stories that are forced upon our residents in the past few years, mocking my support for these basketball courts. Robert Plaza's racist comments about the type of people that basketball courts will attract is quite appalling. And I know there are others that share this racist mindset. I am ashamed of that. Riffraff? Violence? Maybe they should come watch us play or watch the many kids at Pierce that played basketball on their teams throughout the years and would love to have an outdoor park and court. Sorry, they deserve to have an outdoor court. Please remember the golfing facilities did replace our basketball courts over 10 years ago. But again, I have never said nor promoted replacing any of the golfing fund with basketball courts. As many residents agreed, there's room in our parks for both. To summarize and be clear, a white man was exposed for having expressed hate speech against a man of color. That white man and undoubtedly other white members took it upon themselves to handle the matter without involving that person of color who was affected and was the target. This alone intensifies the racist repercussions significantly. Following the established tradition of sweeping this under the rug is not a healthy path forward. Sunlight is always the best disinfectant. Yes, I am personally offended by all of this. These comments hurt me and my family and my friends. And yes, I'm angry and disheartened, but there are bigger issues at stake. People like to say this is the way things have always been in the points. We have an opportunity to change that again. I know so many residents that do not support this racist, out of touch way of thinking, and many have reached out to me. I want to thank them for sharing their support and encouraging me to stand up and by standing with me. I'm still determining my next course of action, but I ask you please to share your thoughts with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Wiener,
So,
something on this topic?
yes, it is.
Okay.
I'm sorry that something happened where you were hurt, your family was hurt, but this is not appropriate to attack Bob Plaza like this where he can't defend himself. I am not a language police. I was not there. I live my life by a set of values, and I would love to see the rest of the community do it as well. We need to have some grace. Bob Plaza served the community for 31 years. He served the community on Parks and Rec. Okay, I don't think it is appropriate for us as a council to sit and berate. That is the same thing that you are upset about, that you are taking someone's words in the worst possible light and we are attacking and denigrating someone who can't defend himself.
I'm sorry I offended him. I wasn't there to defend myself either.
I understand.
But you're defending him now.
I am saying that we need to have grace and we should not sit.
Why
and
do we have to
project.
have grace?
I don't want to create a
That's the
debate on
problem.
this.
We always want to be.
This is not appropriate for the city council to sit and denigrate someone. You don't want to be denigrated, and I don't, for someone who served the community for 31 years, this is not right. We are better as a council. We all need to strive to do better. All of us do. But this is not the forum to sit and denigrate someone like that. I think that is wrong. I'm sorry.
Other comments on this subject, if any? I know I would like to say that, Mr. Allen, I'm certainly sorry that you were the subject of that episode, along with the Chin family, and it would be very upsetting for them as well. I hope it is evident that we are taking the steps that acknowledge the past, so that we can move forward as a community. And I'm going to paint a vision. Yes, we have a past, but more importantly, we have a future. And in that, we have a race opportunity. And again, we're doing what it takes to acknowledge, to heal, to move forward, whether that means recruiting the right leaders or shifting our landscape. That has happened and is happening. So we should be able as a community to move forward. Trust and healing takes time, and we're fulfilling our pledge as a body to make steady and worthy progress in that direction. So I hope you see the actions and the results of what has occurred as part of that. And thank you to Mr. Wiener for your comments as well.
Ms. Hodges, what actions were taken?
I think it's important to be
I was never contacted.
productive.
It was just shoved under the rug. We didn't mention it once here.
One of my favorite words in the last year or two has been grace, and I think
I
that's
hear
where
the
this
grace all the
is
time, but there's no grace when a
And-
racist talks in public about somebody else. It's time to not have grace and address the fact.
It has been addressed directly, and the result is there. And I ask that the community see that, and again, move forward gracefully and in a way that keeps us intact. We have addressed the issue, and again, I'm very sorry that you were the subject of it, but it has been handled, and we can. I've reached out to you and wanted to do coffee before that. That still offer is still there, so perhaps that's where this discussion should continue. So thank you, Councilmember Rowland. Other comments as part of council comment that are separate issues? I just quickly would like to say, yes, Run, Walk, and Roll is Saturday. I really encourage everybody to be there. There are more than 500 people registered. It's to benefit the U of M palliative care. I think more than $140,000 has been raised. Great community building opportunity to help support not only little Louisa the warrior, but also Elizabeth Sharon and her family, who is has a very serious disease that is affecting them. We also, I'd like to thank the Grosse Pointe Sail Club as well. What a great tradition in the community. It was wonderful to be a part of the start of the Tuesday night sales. If you're ever looking for something to do on Tuesday nights, please go to the park and you'll know why you live in Grosse Pointe Park. And I'd like to congratulate all of our graduates. I happen to have one too, so it's top of mind. And thank the district for preparing them well for college. Two, just so you also know some of the things that I've done as mayor in the last month is attending the Eastside Community Network's annual meeting, working collaboratively with that body and supporting the Mack Avenue efforts, also doing the March for Justice at the Church of Messiah, and attending the AAUW's meeting, another great way to ensure. Councilmember Brenner, we also were at the Grosse Pointe Park event as well. So just really trying to move things forward. So those are the only
Speaking
items
of
I
that,
have. And yes, Mr.
I'm sorry to
Seisman.
interrupt,
No,
but speaking
not
of
at all.
business association, if you're on 94 driving by 9 Mile, look up. There's a billboard advertising the Grosse Pointe Park Business Association.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so check it out. Sorry.
No, that was perfectly appropriate. Okay, if there are no more comments, we can move to our meeting. Yes, Mr. Coffey.
Quick comment, and it's more of a thank you to the residents. I know there was that house fire on Beaconsfield. I did stop by and talk to the family, and I don't know who they were. I was told by one of the firefighters. The battalion chief came out and said, any able-bodied residents that can help us unroll these 1,000-foot-long hoses, and I guess people just jumped in and helped, and that is just awesome. So I don't know who they were, but thank you.
Right. Okay, we'll now move to public comment, non-agenda items. And certainly, okay, yes, sir. Please approach the podium. Welcome.
Thank you very much. My name is Adnan Dijai. Been a resident of the park for 49 years. In 49 years, I voted for every single local, state, and federal election, and I will never quit. And just to make a side comment here, I want to mention to you that some people unfortunately forget that everybody in this country is either an immigrant or a descendant of an immigrant.
Thank you. Bingo.
I'm an immigrant myself. I'm proud. A few weeks ago, I expressed to the group some concerns about the planned parking structure next door. Since then, two things happened that I really would like to just slightly expand on that, and I will stay within my allotted time. One is I had the chance to talk to some of the original planning commission who initiated this concept. And my understanding from talking to some of them is that the rationale for the structure is to have enough parking for the planned art center when it is complete. So that's one thing that I was not aware of, but was educated to it. And incidentally, I'll mention that the few planning commission members I talked to live considerably away from the structure. And I wonder how many of the original planning commission members have a direct view of what they have there. Do we seriously think that there's an overwhelming traffic problem that will arise if the plan for the art center continues? And I'm a very much supporter of the art center. But do we really need more areas for parking cars than currently exist or what is planned to be done? Has there ever been any, I know I won't get an answer, I'm just wanting you to think about the things I'm mentioning. Has there ever been any survey of the immediate planning community of the impact of this planning, this structure on the community? I am one of them, and I have direct view. And as I look at the other thing that came to mind since I talked to you last time is that the planned parking area is going to pretty much cover the whole space here, pretty much. And that really was a surprise. Do we really need all that space for parking?
Your time is up, Mr. Dijani, but finish your thought.
All right. Has there a decision been made or is it still being discussed? And if it is still being discussed, who is the ultimate authority on making that decision? I know I won't get an answer, but if any one of you feel compelled Let educate me anytime in the future. I'm
We would
available.
be happy to do that. Can you make sure Mr. Dejani
Yes.
gets a phone call? Thank you. Yes, Ms. Dejani.
Yes, I am Vesna Dejani, and I also live at 38 Point Park Place. I was intending to be extremely brief and make one statement saying that I am very much opposed to turning this small plot of open space into concrete area for another 65 cars or whatever the picture showed. But after listening to you all tonight, I have to say that I am stunned at the amount of time and interest was given amongst yourselves about dog park. So it seems to me that you're very concerned about dogs getting muddy feet, about owners getting muddy feet, about your willingness to listen to the idea of spending money on AstroTurf to cover that space, which I expect is bigger than the space here that we are looking at, to try to keep it open so that it can continue to work on giving us all clean air to breathe. More important, I think, than dogs getting muddy feet. I also was surprised to hear several comments about the importance and value of relationships that are formed amongst the dog owners. A community within the community, I think I heard somebody say. Actually, I think it's also very important to watch the people who use this open space currently, the 8, 9, 10-year-old children. Space, which is obviously close to. They live in a densely populated neighborhood, homes on small lots, not giving them very much space around, and yet they can bring their ball and kick it around or hit the wiffle ball or whatever, very much like my children played, very much like I played, probably like many of you played, which is really a plus for Grosse Pointe Park when it comes to young families looking for a good place to live and raise their children. And I expect the relationships that are formed by those young kids playing there are equally, at least equally, if not more important than the relationships formed amongst the dog owners. So I vote for keeping this small parcel of land open so that it can continue its big, important job of giving us clean air. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
I'm Susan Mazer from the condo. Thank you for letting me speak. Once again, I respectfully but strongly oppose the destruction of the beautiful green space by the Ewald Library to build a parking lot. Last Friday, I sent a third email to all council members, and I hope you've had a chance to read it. Is there anyone in this room who would like to have a parking lot just 27 steps from their fence line? Because I want to thank you so much. You're the only one who has answered my email. I've sent 3 emails to the whole council. You're the only one who's answered me. Thank you.
Mr. Mazer.
My name is Al Mazer, and I live at 3 Point Park Place. But before I make my comments, I want to say to Councilman Raylan one thing. We are part of one race. It's called the human race.
Thank
you. So I firmly oppose turning this Ewald green space into a parking lot, and I offer some alternatives for consideration. On the south side of Jefferson, The Grand Marais Professional Center has 15 parking spaces. Bank of America, which is closed, has 25 spaces. The Ascension Medical Group has 25 spaces. The south side of Jefferson between Pemberton and Lake Point, leaving one space for the fire hydrant at the southwest corner of Lake Point, there's approximately 8 or 9 spaces for parking there. All of these people who could be SCAP theater attendees can just cross Jefferson at the Pemberton Lake. On the north side of Jefferson, the 2 Henry Ford ophthalmology buildings have 98 spaces. Jefferson Avenue on the north side, from Henry Ford buildings to Lake Point, is about 16 spaces. Merritt Academy, which has 30 to 40 parking spaces, still appears to be closer to the SCAP theater than the Ewald Green space. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mazur. Mr. Donnelly?
Good evening. My name is Greg Donnelly. In the nearly 9 years I've lived here, unfortunately, this is not the first time that I've come here to speak about racism in our community, and I fear it won't be the last. So I'd like to say to Councilmember Ron, you were incredibly brave, incredibly courageous to come here tonight and say what you said. To all the white people in the room, and especially to the members of council and administration, sorry, I'm getting choked up here because this is really just a sad statement about our community. I don't think any of us white people could ever understand the courage that it took for him to get up here and say what he did tonight. And rather than embrace him and support him as our community should, he was slapped in the face. You want to be ashamed of yourself. That was disgusting. Completely disgusting. You owe him an apology. Mayor Hodges, you did the same thing with nicer language. You owe him an apology too. Not one other person up here tonight even acknowledged him for pouring out his heart. This is a really sad day in our city. So much to celebrate tonight. Wonderful, wonderful efforts of one of our youngest members of our community to save his family. In contrast to Vikas, who's the victim of a racist attack, then being attacked again when he brings it up publicly. I want to say to you that we see you, your community sees you, and we're here to support you. We can do better and we should do better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dick Schroeder, Grosse Pointe Park. I empathize with Councilmember Raylan. I understand exactly how he feels. He was insulted because of his race. Kind of like my wife and I were the last time I was at the city council meeting by Councilmember Raylan, who was showed his disdain because of the white people in this city council meeting. Now you know exactly how I felt. Now you know exactly how you insulted my wife. And it made us feel terrible. We didn't deserve to feel terrible, and neither did you. I agree thoroughly with you. I am empathetic with you. Insulting somebody because of their race is the worst thing you can do. My life was a body of work where I helped a lot of Black people, a lot of gay people, a lot of transgender people. I got a call from Curtis Hertel not long ago, who played football with me along with a lot of Black people. And he remembers those days fondly. I don't expect you to look at me. I really don't. But I want you to know how empathetic I am towards you. Now, the only problem I have with Mr. Donnelly, because I agree with Mr. Donnelly, that racism that was done in this room, and he attacked it appropriately. I did it in January, and I attacked it appropriately. The difference was Mayor Hodges asked me to be a little more respectful to the community. And I didn't say anybody was disgusting at that time. And I sat down because I respect these people. But I do not respect racism of any kind at all. And you can look back at my life, you can check with Curtis Hertel, mention my name, see what kind of things he's got to say about me. But remember, racism is not defined by just the color of our skin, it's in the heart. And my heart has never been racist. And I remember when Greg Bowens use his racist words. And I checked with Chief Jarrell, see if he would take him off the council. Chief Jarrell, we had a pleasant conversation. He shared his opinion, I shared mine, and I respected this man for his opinion. We should respect everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeder. I think it's important to, Mr. Brenner, perhaps you and I can commit as part of the Community Engagement Committee, and the whole goal there is to address these issues, perhaps work in tandem with Mr. Rellan and others to come up with some solutions here and make sure that we're attending to this as any good, solid community would.
Absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you. Yes, Ms. Bolt.
Kelly Bull, before I make my point here, I'd just like to say as a middle school teacher, I would always teach my children that never talk about a person without them present. And so if the person's not there to defend themselves, things can be taken out of context and it just blows up and it's not a good way to solve the problem. Okay, I'm here to remind the council and people that in May, last month, the US Supreme Court unanimously decided that the city of Boston violated the First Amendment by denying a group from flying its flag, while the city of Boston had flown 50 special interest flags previously. And I mention this because right now the Community Engagement Committee seems to be wading into the same murky waters. It is supporting a special interest group that is going to be showing movies at our movie theater. And it is partnering with a sponsor and allowing this group to show movies at the 7 p.m. time slot, whereas other groups have asked to use the theater and they've been only given the 4 p.m. time slot. So I am wondering, my question is the committee open to allowing other special interest groups and to partnering with special sponsors then and giving us or special interest groups equal opportunity to utilize the theater also at the 7 p.m. slot.
City Manager Seisland, it's up to you if you want to address that within the 3
Mrs.
minutes.
Mrs. Bowl, we can talk, if you want to come by City Hall or exchange emails, we can do that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Bannon?
I just wanted to say that a lot of people in the community love you, we respect you. And I feel so bad at what was said. I was embarrassed to be on the Parks and Recs Commission. And I know many of my fellow commissioners were. That doesn't represent how any of us feel. And we're sorry. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bannon. Ms. Roberson, welcome. Thank you.
Good evening, I am Portia Roberson. This is my first time before this body, so thank you for allowing me a few moments to speak. I'll be brief. I too want to apologize for what happened to you. I'm not a resident of this community, but I am a resident of the city of Detroit, and I've had some experiences here in Grosse Pointe that some of you may actually be aware of that have made me especially aware of what it feels like. So I am here though in my capacity as the CEO of Focus Hope, which is a racial justice nonprofit organization that does a lot of great work around these communities, Wayne, Oakland, Washtenaw, Macomb to be exact. And so I'm coming to share some news about some of the programs we have that are available for the community and really making folks aware. We are very blessed to have gotten out of debt for the first time in 16 years. And so we are now sort of pushing out our programs in a way that we haven't been able to for the past 4 years that I've led Focus Hope. And so we have a senior food program. And basically that's why I'm here. There are opportunities for more seniors to join our senior food program. All of our seniors, all the seniors need to do, is to call Focus Hope and let us know their age, their address, and how many people are living in their household. And we are now, because of COVID over the past 2 years, different from having people come in and shop for the food program, we are doing curbside pickup and we actually do deliveries. And so it's really important for us to make sure that that's wide. So I thank you for giving me a few minutes to speak. I've been around here for a very long time. Madam Mayor, thank you for giving me a few moments. I appreciate all of you.
Should also note that you're running for Congress.
I am as well, but I separate the two because it's the city hall, so I want to make sure
That's right,
I'm
I'll
very
say it
careful.
for you.
I'm a lawyer, so I know better than to mix the two.
Thank you for coming out tonight. Can I see another hand? And again, Representative Tate, you certainly can have a moment too. Lakewood.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Joe Tate, 192 Lenox Street, Detroit, Michigan. Just want to be brief in my remarks. I know met with the city manager and a couple of members of the council earlier this year when you all were in Lansing. This past March, the state of Michigan, the governor signed a $4.7 billion water infrastructure, primarily water infrastructure supplemental. Of that, around $1.9 billion was plowed into the state revolving fund. So we'll be working with you, City Manager Seisland, on advocating for those dollars to get down. We know that there have been applications that have been submitted by Grove Park, and know that over the next several weeks, we'll be working through that. Also, our fiscal year budget in the state will most likely be done by the end of this month or early July, trying to get ahead of things because we know that school districts and local municipalities need to begin their planning and work on their planning as we go along. So as always, my door is always open. That members have my contact information, so feel free, to reach out if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay, well, with that, a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
In order, seconded by Rowland, seconded by Gallagher, to adjourn at 10:28. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Breyer.
Yes.
Gallagher.
Yes.
Tapia.
Yes.
Yes. Rayland. Sorry.
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.